Chapter 9:14. Fear was the oldest and most powerful emotion of human beings. However, since Han Dong was reborn as a cell and saw the world of destiny and the hybrid demons outside the city, this emotion had been buried for a long time. Only when he saw the old king, that was several levels higher than himself, this ancient emotion would be expressed. The white object that floated by looked like a strange woman wrapped in white cloth. Her cheeks were flesh and her teeth were completely exposed. The image was similar to the spirit in the ghost story world. But how could Han Dong, the former manager of the ghost story world, be afraid of this kind of thing? Even if it was really dangerous, Han Dong would not have such a strong sense of fear. His body spontaneously took 3 steps back. Even his right arm was completely zombified and grew an eye. Han Dong tried to suppress this unknown feeling of fear and immediately turned to look at the other members of the team. After all, everyone should have seen the image that flashed by the door. Sure enough, this fear of unknown origin was also affecting everyone. Abel was so scared that his hair stood on end. Other than the hatred in his eyes, there was also a trace of fear. His body was completely pressed against the corner of the wall. Demps also pressed his body against the wall and spontaneously created a simple magic shield to cover his body. Cold sweat slid down his cheeks. Even Meritus, who had the atavistic body, was also scared. Although her pride did not allow her to retreat, the ground was full of water. Visible to the naked eye, drops of water were constantly flowing out from the pores of Meritus's slightly fleshy legs. Even the clear sound of water dripping could be heard. Just one glance was enough to trigger the fear of everyone. Han Dong also realized that things were not simple. This unknown feeling of fear might be related to the nature of the promotion competition. The feeling of fear was indeed caused by the white object floating by the door, but before it reached everyone's head, this feeling of fear was magnified by some factor. This caused everyone to fall into a rare state of panic. There are too few clues, and the thing outside should have locked onto us. Now is not the time to think. We have to find the safety zone. Just as Han Dong was about to use the mirror to observe the corridor outside and choose a suitable escape route, a white shadow flashed. It was not the ghostly figure floating outside. The furry Abel seemed to have sensed a hint of danger with his unique bestial senses. He rushed over, grabbed Han Dong's body, and dragged him away from the door. The next second, creak, 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 a strange white cloth shot through the door and into the operating theater. If Han Dong was still standing at the door, it was very likely that he would be entangled by the white cloth, or even cut in half. However, the target of this white cloth was not Han Dong, but the large egg sac structure operating table. When the white cloth was shot into it, this semi-automatic operating table also started to work. It was as if it was nurturing something. Cut off the power supply to the operating table. Han Dong immediately swung his left arm. The black sand of death, which looked like a small scythe, flew toward the operating table. Just as he was about to cut the metal cable at the end of the operating table, a terrifying arm tore apart the cover of the operating table and dispersed the death magic with a single slap. Crack, crack, crack. On the pale arm, there were a total of 26 fingers. The long and black fingernails swayed strangely in the air. Because they were too dense, sometimes they would collide with each other and make various uncomfortable sounds. Run! With an order, everyone evacuated the operating theater. Han Dong deliberately stayed at the back of the team and closed the door of the operating theater. At the same time, he gave Meritus a look. After more than 10 days of cooperation and dozens of trials with the warden, a tacit understanding had been formed between the two. Meritus immediately spat out a highly viscous water ball from her mouth. When it hit the surface of the operating theater's metal door, it immediately formed a sticky barrier. He only hoped that this could buy some time. Demps, the job of leading the way is up to you. You must find the safe zone as soon as possible. The job of bringing up the rear is temporarily left to me. If I can't stop it, run with all your strength. Demps, who was at the front, immediately made an OK gesture. At this critical moment, Demps was naturally the most reliable. After all, Han Dong knew very well that Demps could not afford to lose in a life-and-death situation. The things he carried were too heavy. Miss Mary, do you dare to keep an eye on the situation behind us with me? Why wouldn't I dare? Although Mauritius's expression was arrogant, the fear in her heart had not completely disappeared. Crack at this moment, the sealed operating theater's door was torn apart along with the viscous water stains covering the surface. It did not play any role in delaying time at all. The pale arm with more than 20 fingers stretched out first. When the fingers fell on the ground, they easily scratched a few deep marks. The floor, which was as solid as steel, was no different from cotton candy in front of these fingernails. There was more than one arm like this. Immediately after, several similar arms crawled out of the operating theater one after another. A woman wrapped in a white hospital gown appeared in front of Han Dong's eyes. There was no structure of legs and all of them were replaced by arms. In addition, the woman's mouth, the shoulder blades on both sides of her back, and her belly button also had arms all over her body. By scraping the ground with a large number of fingers, she could achieve fast crawling. Creak, creak, during the crawling process, the sound of fingernails rubbing against each other, colliding and tearing the ground was mixed together, which was unusually harsh. Such a scene and sound, for some reason, caused the sense of fear to be constantly magnified, and then transmitted to the brain of the witness. It directly scared the famous Lord Mauritius into a wet state. Even Han Dong's mind was in a mess for a while. What's with this strange feeling of fear? It messed up my thoughts. Also, what's with this need to pee? Do you have to be so exaggerated? By the way, what kind of horror have I not seen before? I even slept on Miss Jane's lap in the morgue with the heaviest energy in Ridley. Han Dong directly slapped himself in the face and suppressed the sense of fear through the stimulation of pain. John's spine activated directional enhancement. Soft bones immediately grew from the spine of the back, strengthening the internal structure of the right arm. Curved bones drilled in and out of the surface of the right arm. The right upper arm formed a structure of an eye socket with white bones, and the single eye symbolizing G formed in the bone eye socket. This G eye also had a little blood in it, which symbolized the holy blood attribute. Unfortunately, the ability was greatly suppressed, and the holy blood could not be represented in the form of a holy sword at all. It could only simply enhance the regeneration of the arm. A unique zombie arm was formed. The demon eye opened and locked on to the target. Of course, Han Dong showed this form not to face this monster head-on, but to use the experience of picking up garbage over the past 10 days, whether it was the idle trolley in the aisle, the bioenergy lamp hanging on the wall, or even some steel door panels that were easy to remove. As long as it could be thrown, Han Dong used it and threw it at the target one after another. Most of the thrown objects would be torn apart in advance, but the effect was still there. With the bombardment of various kinds of garbage, the monster's speed also had a slight tendency to decrease slightly. Seeing this scene, Mauritius was not to be outdone. Swish, a pink tongue that belonged to Mary stretched out from her mouth. This original tongue that belonged to the toad could freely contract, was tough, and had power. The pale pink tongue could be long or short. It rolled out various forms of garbage from passing hospital rooms and even pulled out a metal bed and threw it at the monster. Swish! Even if the metal bed was torn apart, the broken metal components still had lethality. A steel pipe smoothly pierced the target's body. Chapter 9:15. Where did this feeling of fear come from? It wasn't just Han Dong. Demps, who was in charge of finding the safe house, was also troubled by this question. This fear has already reached the level of thinking and action. We must find the safe house, otherwise we will all be eliminated. It's impossible to wait until next month to participate in the promotion competition. What awaits us is a complete failure of the fate event, or even being directly erased because of the hybrid demon label. But how can we determine the safe house just by relying on the eyes and the pyramid symbol? Due to the influence of fear, Demp's reasoning also reached a dead end as they continued to run for their lives. They couldn't continue to search aimlessly like this, they had to completely decipher the privilege clue. What did the pyramid symbol with the eyes mean? If it wasn't a symbol, then what did it mean? At this moment, there was a loud noise behind them. Meritus used her unique toad tongue to throw an entire metal bed at the white-clothed monster that was chasing them. A sharp steel pipe popped out from the torn metal bed and directly stabbed into the monster's body. However, this wasn't a good thing. Instead, it completely enraged the white-clothed monster. An abnormally thick arm grew out from the part of his body that was stabbed. He used the steel pipe that was inserted into his body as a weapon and threw it back in the opposite direction. The steel pipe flew twice as fast as Meritus threw the metal bed. It went straight for his head. Fear nibbled away the available resources in the brain. Meritus fell into a momentary daze. When she finally reacted, the sharp steel pipe was less than 2 meters away from her, and she couldn't dodge it. At the critical moment, a black shadow flashed in front of her. Whoosh! Blood spattered on Mary's face. The tip of the steel pipe just happened to hover about 1 centimeter in front of her. What blocked her was a zombie's arm. The steel pipe had completely penetrated the palm of the zombie's hand. Although it didn't grab the steel pipe, it relied on the friction produced by flesh and bone to stop the steel pipe. When Meritus tilted her head and looked at Han Dong's determined eyes, it was very strange. There was a feeling that she had never felt before in her body. Continue to throw things, don't stop. Okay. Han Dong was completely in a state of high tension. He knew that this couldn't go on. So far, more than half of his stamina had been consumed, and he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. While touching the special ring on his finger, he shouted, "Demps, if we don't find the safe zone, we will all die here. Hurry, I can't hold on for much longer." "I know. Give me some more time." Dempus had seen the dangerous scene that had just occurred. After realizing the seriousness of the matter, he couldn't care less about it. Due to the suppression of the sixth finger, it was unable to show its spiritual form and could only show its physical form. Demps clenched his teeth and poked his temple with his sixth finger. He directly pressed his fingers on the cerebral cortex to give enough brain stimulation. Drops of light pink blood also slid down Demps's nose. Such a strong stimulation successfully broke through the shackles brought by fear. Wait, could the triangular mark with an eye mean that? When he thought of this, Demps used both of his hands to draw a triangle in front of his eyes. He wanted to use this method to spy on the hospital. The hospital passageway in front of him changed on a small scale. A faint black gas escaped from a closed ward through the gap of the door. "Abel, break open the second last ward on the right. The safe house should be inside." Abel immediately switched to the running mode of a beast. His back was raised high, and an explosive impact broke through the door. The interior was just an ordinary ward. The door was uprooted by Abel's impact. It didn't look like a special room that could block evil spirits and ghosts. "Demps, is the safe house here?" Abel poked his head out with a puzzled face. "There should be a door inside. Let me see." Demps still stood in front of the ward, maintaining the triangular vision. Several mechanical bio-style beds were neatly arranged in the ward, with some living infusion tubes similar to blood vessels hanging on the top. But he didn't see any structure that looked like a safety door. "Nicholas, try to delay it as much as possible." Han Dong's voice immediately came back. "This thing can't be removed for long, at most 15 seconds. Okay. I'll try my best." A drop of cold sweat slid down Demps's cheek. He hadn't felt this sense of urgency for a long time. Being targeted by such a terrifying thing at the beginning of the game, He didn't know if it was an exception or if all the teams in the competition had encountered similar situations. Abel, Mia. Search all the places you can think of. The two of them began a large-scale search of the ward. Demps didn't move. He just stood at the door and watched the two's searching behavior. One had to be an authority as well as a bystander to be able to see through mystery. The wall tiles were torn apart, the living infusion tubes hanging on the top were cut open, and the thick beds were lifted, but they still couldn't find any trace of the door, not even its outline. At this time, Abel seriously suspected that the so-called safe house wasn't here at all. Wait, this is? Dempsey's eyes noticed an overturned bed. He immediately went forward to check the bottom of the bed and found a triangular mark with an eye embedded in it. Demonization. Demps immediately turned the bed back to its original position and lifted the leather quilt that was tightly stuck to the bedboard. A pure black door appeared in front of him. He didn't expect the safe door to be hidden on the surface of the bed. Now there was no time to think about the spatial principle. He shouted, "Nicholas, come in quickly!" The three people in the ward jumped in first. The interior corresponded to the brightly lit black room. The biological light set in the safe house immediately dispelled the remaining fear in everyone's mind. The next second, the only one who came in was Meritus, who was drenched in sweat and whose eyes flashed with fear. "Where's Nicholas? He'll be here soon." Everyone was worried about Han Dong, who was in the last place. An aura of death accompanied the black shadow into the safe door, and then the door was closed. Some kind of black sickle-shaped material was returned to the ring like a liquid. When the status was lifted, Han Dong, who was sweating profusely, collapsed on the ground. There was almost no interval between his breathing, and he couldn't even say a word. After waiting for a few minutes, Han Dong's situation slightly improved. He lightly punched Dempsey's shoulder. "Didn't I say that I could only hold on for 15 seconds? I delayed for 21 seconds. If this happens again, I'll really die." Chapter 9:16. In the deepest part of the Black Pyramid, an existence that was completely black was soaking in the golden fountain, which was unique to the holy city. The golden rule in the liquid state was arranged on his body, causing his skin to show a black gold luster. Pharaoh, the supreme monarch of God's capital Akamagan, who controlled the country's military, political, judicial, and religious power. At the same time, he was also the ultimate ruler of planet Libra 233. Using the leisure time during the bath, he used the Eye of Horus to watch this more interesting promotion competition. As the supreme ruler, Pharaoh's ability was also the best in all aspects. Naturally, he was very clear that there was a group of humans who did not belong to this planet among the contestants. However, Pharaoh did not have any feelings of rejection at all. He even told the referee and think tank in charge of the competition that as long as they were of the human race, they must be treated equally. He was very welcoming and willing to accept this group of human compatriots from the mother planet. As long as they could work for God's capital, they were his people. Just now, Pharaoh's eyes lit up, and even the golden pattern on his chest changed accordingly because he accidentally saw a very interesting scene in the competition. In the promotion competition with the theme of escape, the think tank set an irresistible condition, fear. In the situation where the contestants could not get rid of the attack of fear, there was a contestant who could break out an unexpected ability at the critical moment and cut off part of the source of fear. As a self-proclaimed god, he naturally knew the source of this ability. Anubis, what an interesting foreigner. However, in the following process of watching, Pharaoh saw several characters that interested him. There are individuals who can learn the Sun Tablet inscription, and slaves who can withstand high-end surgery and advanced magic at this stage. This group of foreigners is really interesting. They should belong to the elites of the mother planet. If all of them can be developed to be used by me, when they grow up, they can suppress and control the burial area with me. Once the things below are completely controlled, I can control God's capital to return to the human's mother planet. I can bring the great divine slavery back to the mother planet and carry out the ruling and transformation plan of the entire human race, cultivating more elite slaves. Then, with the assistance of God's water, the mother planet would be completely swallowed. At that time, Shendu would grow into a universe insect that would not be restricted by the rules of the first universe. I, the Pharaoh, will personally start the galactic invasion and become the greatest existence in history. The view changed. Safe house cube size of 10m x 10m x 10 MIT was built with black stones that resembled pyramids, which was the exact opposite of the white theme of the hospital. There was a miniature fountain in the center, with cool spring water constantly flowing out from the spout. Lights similar to those in the belly of fireflies were hung on both sides of the wall. The pale yellow and slightly warm light shone on everyone's body, and the remaining fear in their minds was quickly dispelled. The reason for this was unknown. Logically speaking, fear was not an emotion that would appear and disappear in an instant. Even if he had escaped to an absolutely safe area, he would still be affected by the residual fear when he recalled the previous terrifying experience. The fear in the promotion competition gave him a feeling that he could come and go as he pleased. The fountain's water source was naturally designed to quench everyone's thirst. However, before everyone could take the first sip, Meritus had already soaked her body in it. She used the spring water to replenish her body's water. Mia almost scolded her because of the love rival factor. How could a female toad be so shameless? Han Dong stopped Mia in time and signaled her not to worry. After all, Han Dong had been to the Bufo kingdom built on Nkei. There were toads in the rivers, ponds, and fountains to wash their bodies or replenish their water. After all, toads were originally amphibians, so he couldn't blame Meritus for this. Seeing that Han Dong actually spoke up for someone else, and it was a female creature at that. Mia's restraint, that had settled down in the past 10 days, was almost broken. In the end, she chose to wear a mask to hide her angry expression. Miss Mary is different from the rat in Perugia. She's a supportive type of hybrid demon that's more amiable. She's also one of the more gentle types among the toads. The clear water in the pool she's been in will be tainted with the toad's characteristics. After drinking it, it can promote blood circulation and refresh the mind. Nicholas, how did you know? You seem to have experienced something these days when you were together? Demps deliberately made an expression of drinking water, as if he was asking if Han Dong had drunk Meritus's bathwater or licked someone else's body. When we were sparring partners, Miss Mary just replenished my water. Don't talk nonsense. Everyone went forward to drink the spring water. When it entered their mouths, there was a refreshing feeling. Mia stood alone in the distance and refused to drink it even if she was beaten to death. Before Han Dong suggested a discussion, Meritus, who had just replenished her water, asked a question she couldn't understand with a worried expression. Where did this strong sense of fear come from? Since I stepped into the door of truth, and completed the atavistic evolution with the most primitive truth, I haven't felt such fear for a long time. Even when I met a Bufo, I was only filled with awe. Han Dong had been thinking since he entered the safe house. Since the topic had started, he threw out the results of his thoughts. I can think of about 3 possibilities. 1. Environmental impact. Imhotep's healing area was constructed using a special stone that could evoke primal fear. External impact. In a game with the theme of escape, we must avoid direct conflict with the monsters. In addition to the monsters being extremely dangerous, the think tank or referee who set up the game will also invade our mind to stimulate the emotion of fear. In a situation where all of us are suppressed, this kind of mental invasion is quite easy. Or, when we were in the preparation area, we were already implanted with fear by the mental shock released by the obelisk. which magnified our sensitivity to the emotion of fear in advance. Virtual test. The development of biological sensing technology in Shindu is far beyond our world. Every household is equipped with a craniometer, a tool that connects consciousness. We may have been affected by the biological sensing technology and connected our consciousness to the hospital area. The above three situations are possible. We must go back to the hospital for further confirmation. Just as Han Dong was explaining his inference, Demps had used a white liquid to draw a hospital map on the dark ground. It was drawn from the route from the operating room to the safe house. The whole route, including the length ratio of each passage, was clearly remembered in Demp's mind. Chapter 9:17. The view changed. Dragon City team, demon-slaying crowd. It turned out that Han Dong's team was not lucky. The Dragon City team on the other floor was in the same situation. They were also targeted by something almost undefeatable right from the start. Ring, the sound of the metal bell echoed in the tunnel. Behind them was a person who was floating in the air and holding a metal bell in one hand. His face was completely sunken like an abyss. For the time being, he was called the Trapped One. Whether it was looking at the sunken face or hearing the sound of the bell, the fear points would accumulate. The youngest girl in the team, who was proficient in the 5 elements, was so scared that her face turned pale. No matter what kind of attack was thrown, it would be absorbed by the sunken face of the Trapped One. At the same time, the shaking of the bell would block all the attacks that were close to it. When all kinds of hidden weapons, 5 elements, and even obstacles could not stop the Trapped One. A burst of sunlight shone directly on the target, causing the Trapped One to cover his sunken face with both hands. Drops of black liquid kept flowing out from the sunken face. At the same time, the monk Gu Su immediately fell into a weakened state due to the use of such a high-level ability. Found it! It's here! The leader was the black-haired young man who had a better figure than most of the girls. He was agile and fast, sharp, and could see all kinds of details. A silver light flashed. The young man used a dagger to cut open the door of the medicine room and quickly found the safety door, inside the medicine cabinet. Everyone immediately fell into it. Ordovician Jade, who was holding a 3-tipped spear, leaned against the wall and gasped for breath. How many teams can survive such a difficult opening? The reason why we didn't lose any members is because of the divine power you obtained in the Holy Capital. Don't underestimate others. At least that team of hybrid demons can survive. For now, the promotion competition is a big problem. It's far from what we originally thought. I hope we won't meet other troublesome teams. View changed. Dempsey's memory was quite amazing. In the process of escaping under the influence of fear, he was actually able to memorize all the paths he had taken and use them to deduce the corresponding floor map. Furthermore, Dempus had specially chosen the outer route and had practically walked through all the outer corridors of the hospital floor. Then, according to a portion of the inner corridors, he had deduced the floor map. The map he had drawn clearly showed the 4-key node. The operating room, where everyone first woke up, was located at the center of the floor. The distance between the safe house and the operating theater was less than 10 meters. On the leftmost and rightmost floors, there was a staircase structure. However, the stairs here were very strange. The leftmost staircase could only lead to the upper floor, while the last staircase could only lead to the lower floor. There was no information about the exit. Now, there was a problem in front of everyone. Should they go up or down? Once you make the wrong choice, you may be further and further away from the exit, but it is also possible that there are exits above and below. Up or down? Meritus, who liked to take the initiative, also looked at Han Dong at this moment. Perhaps it was because of the contact in the past few days that she had gained a new understanding, or perhaps it was because Han Dong had just blocked a fatal blow for her. Down. Whether it is this planet or God's capital itself, down has a special meaning. but it may also put us in an extremely dangerous situation. According to my life in God's capital for the past 10 days, I can roughly confirm that there is a terrifying existence that is related to the origin of God's capital buried at the bottom of God's capital. It is set as a top secret by the higher-ups in the Black Pyramid and the Pharaoh. On the other hand, up may represent escape, which is more in line with the theme of escape. The exit may also be up there. Demps, do you have any ideas? Demps also shook his head. Maybe there are exits up and down, but I can't make a decision. When the two wise men in the team could not come to a conclusion, Mia's voice came from under the mask. Since there may be exits up and down, why don't we vote? Han Dong nodded. Okay, let's use the direction of your fingers. I'll count down from 3, and you can make a decision based on your first instinct. Once the choice is made, it can't be changed. 3, 2, 1. Everyone's index finger pointed down, without exception. The formation remains unchanged. Miss Mary and I will still be in charge of covering the rear. Everyone has rested enough, so let's get ready to go. Although there is no clear time limit, if we can finish the competition in first place, the Black Pyramid may give us some special rewards. When everyone exited through the safety door, they were shocked by the clean and tidy ward in front of them. The ward was the same, and there were no traces of it being rummaged through. Even the iron door that was uprooted by Abel had been restored to its original state. Han Dong carefully opened the door slightly and slowly extended a finger. Then, he used his distortion ability to grow an eye with visual nerves at the tip of his finger to observe the situation outside. There's no one outside, let's go. Just as Han Dong waved to his teammates behind him, creak, creak. The familiar sound of fingernails rubbing and scraping entered everyone's ears, and fear immediately overflowed. The source of the sound was not from the outside, but from inside the ward. When Han Dong turned his head, he saw a terrifying finger quickly crawling out from under the nearest bed. This woman, wrapped in a white hospital gown with heretical finger structures all over her body, stayed in the ward where everyone disappeared. She even took the time to clean up the place and never left. At present, a location was a big problem. The woman was hiding under the bed closest to the door of the ward. Except for Han Dong, who was exploring the passage at the door, the other teammates were hiding inside the ward. If they wanted to leave the ward, they had to get past this woman. Of course, everyone could also choose to retreat to the safe zone. But Han Dong, who was at the door, also needed to get past this woman. And even if they successfully hid back to the safe zone, they didn't know where the woman would ambush them next time. The danger couldn't be eliminated. Thinking of this, Han Dong strengthened his right arm with John's spine. At the same time, he put the ring that exuded the aura of death on the ring finger of his right hand and grabbed the woman who was trying to climb out from under the bed. See through, at the cost of a drop of blood from the demon eye. Han Dong successfully avoided most of the fingernails. With his right arm still intact, he pressed the woman's head, not letting her get up. Go! The opportunity was not easy. The 4 teammates ran out of the ward as fast as they could. Han Dong was also ready to escape. But the moment he withdrew his hand, Han Dong's scream filled the ward. More than a dozen sharp black fingers pierced into his right arm. The skin and flesh of the pierced part immediately turned black, and the bone was quickly corroded. Together with the skin and flesh, the whole arm was torn off. This kind of pain mixed with fear almost made Han Dong faint. But Han Dong's strong willpower made him hold on. With his eyes completely bloodshot, he ran out of the ward with his hand covering his broken arm that was dripping with blood. Meritus, who was in charge of the retreat, was also shocked when she saw this. Your arm. Don't worry about it, let's run first. As long as my ability recovers, I can naturally regenerate it. No, she recalled the scene where Han Dong stretched out his hand to block the fatal attack for her. Mary gritted her teeth and suddenly threw out the slippery tongue in her mouth accurately into the ward. The broken arm was successfully rolled back. The surface of the pale pink soft tongue was also left with several black holes caused by the fingernails. Chapter 9:18. Meritus's water had healing properties and had reattached the severed arm to the wound. The G-virus also helped to reconnect the arm, carried out cell division and regeneration, and coordinated the connection of the nerve. At the same time, also because his arm was torn apart. This kind of bone-deep pain, to a large extent, stimulated Han Dong's brain, and made the fear fade away by more than half. Recalling the scene where he desperately pressed on the monster's head and let his companions escape, a terrible idea suddenly sprouted in Han Dong's mind. Demps, change the route, first stick to the safer area and escape. I have an idea. At this time, what else do you have in mind? The deduction of the map had been completed, and all the members had voted to go to the lower floor. Han Dong himself had sacrificed an arm in exchange for all his teammates to escape. Now, as long as they followed the route to the rightmost staircase, they could leave this floor and get rid of the white-fingered woman. Just now in the ward, I can be sure that the white-fingered woman has the possibility of being killed. Didn't we say to find the exit and complete the promotion competition as the main goal? At this dangerous moment, Demps and Han Dong had different opinions. Moreover, all the members of the team were also deeply affected by fear and were inclined to escape. Trust me once, maybe we can find clues to the exit if we kill her. Maybe it can help us get some opportunities. How confident are you? Demps's face was ugly because he really couldn't afford to lose. As long as everyone can resist the influence of fear and act according to my plan, the success rate is more than 50%. Let me and Miss Mary stall this guy first. Then Demps, you take Abel and Mia and rush forward at the fastest speed, use the square hospital corridor to go behind the target, and attack her from the front and back. I'll trust you once the demon was activated. It could only use 5% of its ability. The demon's appearance was a blue crystal blood vessel that protruded on the surface of the skin. However, the increase to the normal body was still considerable. Overall speed increased by 20%. Casting efficiency also increased by 20%. While activating the demon, Demps poked his finger into his temple in a similar way to suppress the invasion of fear to the greatest extent. He led the two members along the square passageway and quickly circled to the back of the target as fast as possible. Han Dong's right arm had completely recovered. Together with Miss Mary, they used the same method of throwing rubbish to slow down the white-fingered woman as much as possible. Mary, I'll need you to assist me the entire time. Try your best to transfer the magic energy in your body to me. My ability can cause a lot of damage to this thing. There was a clear handprint on the back of the white-fingered woman's head. It was the injury caused by being pressed under the bed by Han Dong. The place where the handprint was left was unable to grow hair. Okay. I will lend you the toad bead later. Toad beads? Okay. Han Dong didn't have the time to ask what the toad pearl was, as long as it could replenish mana normally. To kill such a theoretically undefeatable terror primordial, Han Dong's own energy was not enough. He had to rely on Meritus to replenish it. This was also learned from Wang Du's team. Han Dong intended to train Meritus into a similar, mobile power source, plugged in and charged. When they saw a white shadow appear behind the monster, it meant that Demps and the others were about to circle to the back of the monster. The plan was officially executed. Han Dong first shouted, "Leave this monster to me. You try your best to cut off all her fingers." The voice reached the ears of his teammate. The teammates circling to the back also revealed their attack forms one after another. Abel's spine was completely protruding, and his whole body was covered by a kind of beast-style living armor. At the same time, at the top of the left and right fists, a single cutting claw integrated with Abel's characteristics, dragon-scale material, grew one after another. Mia also immediately took the bone knife from her back. But Even if she held the handle with both hands, she still trembled with fear. At this moment, Dempsey's whisper reached the ears of the two. "Hold it." Without mercy. Dempsey's fingers penetrated Mia and Abel's temples in the same way, stimulating and massaging the brain. Only such an extreme method could suppress and control the fear of the two, so that they could carry out the plan and exert their normal strength. After a burst of pain, the two's bodies no longer trembled, and their eyes were firm. At the same time, Han Dong's preparations were also completed. Meritus took out a pure and flawless green crystal bead from her body through the roll of her tongue. This was the toad pearl she mentioned. When she handed it out, a strong sense of weakness swept through her body. If it weren't for the wall to support her, she would have collapsed to the ground. Toad pearl. During the growth period, the toad-like hybrid demon would undergo a stage of molting. The description of the growth experience would be recorded on the toad's clothes. In fact, it was also a kind of abandonment of the past. The wall covered with the toad's clothes could be observed by others. By reading the words and patterns on the surface of the toad's skin, the younger generation could gain experience and accelerate their growth. During the molting period, they would also condense the essence of the body. When reaching the hybrid demon stage, the individual would condense the toad pearl in the body. Molting meant to abandon the unnecessary parts, and condensing the pearl meant to collect the necessary parts. The importance of the toad pearl was comparable to the knight's talent tree, and it was the source of all energy. In order to cooperate with Han Dong's plan, Meritus actually took out the extremely important toad pearl and gave it to an outsider to use. If this matter was known to other hybrid demons in Toad City, Meritus's status as the atavistic body would also be affected. You swallow the toad pearl. With your adaptability, you should be able to use the magical energy stored in the toad pearl. This is very precious, don't let me down. Meritus exhausted the last of her strength to say this sentence, leaving only a rather weak gaze to stare at Han Dong. Okay. When Han Dong swallowed the toad pearl, thump, the beating of the heart was clearly heard. A piece of meat similar to the surface of the toad's body protruded on the surface of the skin, and the turbid energy tried to invade Han Dong's whole body. His calves slowly became thicker, and the overall shape of the toad changed. However, accompanied by the rotation of the black vortex on the surface of the abdomen, the perfect body soon suppressed the side effects of swallowing the toad pearl. At the same time, the center of the black vortex corresponded to the inner abdomen, forming a black groove for fixing and carrying the toad pearl. The energy source was successfully connected. A huge energy system came from the abdomen, which made Han Dong feel like he had obtained a second talent tree. This toad pearl is. Thinking of this, Han Dong's mind trembled. He didn't expect that the hybrid demon, whose identity was already the atavistic body, would be willing to give him such a core to supplement his magic. Chapter 9:19. Since Han Dong chose Prometheus, a world with mythical level contact, he was determined to do something about his left arm. The concept of mythical level contact was first mentioned by the deputy head of the Knights of Destiny, who was also the former head, Mr. Stalvin. Han Dong's left arm belonged to the mythical level of death attribute, but it was completely different from Grim Reaper Alex's. Han Dong's mythical level contact came from Anubis, in ancient Egyptian mythology. As luck would have it, Prometheus corresponded to the world of destiny, which corresponded to the ancient Egyptian civilization. Although the descendants of ancient Egyptians here were influenced by alien technology, these ancient Egyptians who were brought to foreign planets in the early days retained their own gods. The characteristics of Anubis also gave Han Dong special treatment in Shen Du. The ring that he accidentally obtained in the trading area made him more determined to dig deep his left arm. At the same time, Han Dong would also seriously consider the world identity assessment mentioned by Demp. Just like Head Malone, He would try to become a special existence in the world of Prometheus. At present, Han Dong felt a steady stream of chaotic power overflowing from the inside of the toad bead and filling his body. Han Dong, who experienced the benefits of mobile power source for the first time, also brimmed with an unusually happy smile. Similarly, because of the connection of the second energy source, Han Dong was finally able to completely control the ring and had the capital to kill monsters. Miss Mary is really not bad. If I can really obtain a special item that can help the Toad ancestor suppress the mythical shackles during this journey of destiny, I can try to ask it for ownership of Miss Mary. Since I already know that truth of the world is around the world of the Black Tower. Bufo is also very likely to choose to cooperate with me. After all, I can bring them very intuitive information from the destiny space, and even some treasures that can touch their mythical shackles. Give it a try. Try to get your hands on this portable power source. While Han Dong was thinking, beside him, Meridis was also thinking. She didn't expect Han Dong to be able to control her Toad Pearl in such a short time. She immediately added a note in the mating notebook in her head, very capable body. Meridis did not realize that the man in front of her was actually considering training her into a mobile power source and even obtaining her ownership. Let's do it. Bone Ring of the Dead, Slave Equipment. Slave equipment is a special equipment from the world of Prometheus. It is not restricted by the seal of God's capital. Once obtained, it can be used normally. Type, enhancement item quality, excellent blue, a special effect. Frowny face will of the dead infuses the will of thousands of dead people into the wearer's body. Depending on the wearer's ability to control the will, it will exert different effects. It can either increase the wearer's strength or cause the opponent to suffer a strong death corrosion. Note: this equipment is only suitable for users with the ability of death, otherwise it will accelerate the process of death. Source: in the dark corners of the fairy's capital, there are many terrible things that no one knows about. Some low-level slaves were deprived of all rights without any chance to grow at all. They died with great resentment and unwillingness, using the death beetles from the Black Pyramid to gnaw on the remains of these special dead people, swallowing their bones full of resentment into the body. When the number reached 1,000, the completely ossified death beetles were made into a unique bone ring. A slave equipment that completely matched Han Dong's attribute. When the ring worn on the left middle finger was fully activated by Han Dong. Balance broken, the left arm dominated the whole body, and the will of the undead sacrifice could spread to the whole body. The black vortex rotated. Black vortex torso brought the characteristics of the left arm to the whole body through perfect adaptation. The whole body's flesh structure became as loose as sand, and even some hollow parts inside could be seen. Some of the spells inherited from the undead sacrifice were also engraved on the inside of the sandy skin. Originally, the will of 1,000 dead people would be scattered and arranged in Han Dong's whole body, with a painful facial expression on the surface of the skin. But the will of these dead people who died with grievances was unified by the undead sacrifice. At this moment, Han Dong recalled the most profound scenes in his memory, including the skeletal warhorse that drove out of the Gain Forest, the grim Reaper Alex with a giant silver scythe on his back, and the scene of the Holy City as a background to block the old king. Due to the influence of this deep memory, Han Dong also unknowingly built a rough black scythe on his back with black sand. At the same time, he injected the will of these low-level slaves into the scythe. With the injection of a large amount of consciousness, the rough scythe had a fundamental change. The rod was covered with a layer of dry skin, with a texture of touching ancient corpses, and it was quite easy to wield. The blade retained a part of the black sand structure, and at the same time, it was covered with the teeth of the dead. The teeth were used to tear the enemy to vent their anger when they were alive. In summary, Han Dong, as a low-level slave, showed the dead form, a dead person with a living scythe on his back. Another equipment, John's spine, through internal growth, helped Han Dong in the dead form to build a more complete skeleton. This appearance directly increased the ratings of the game by 30%, and the number of viewers who paid for the first-person view of Nicholas also increased greatly. The relevant person in charge of the Colosseum also showed a gratified smile. Ha ha! The long-lost crazy laughter echoed in the tunnel. Han Dong, who completed the transformation for the first time, couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ha ha! The clown's body is really useful. I didn't expect to break the balance and use one of the ability systems to be so comfortable. At the same time, when the laughter ended, see-through Han Dong, who completed the transformation, grabbed the target. He wanted to use the same method to press the finger monster to the ground. Swish, no matter how the monster's fingers cut. The arms made of sand were hollow to begin with. The internal blood vessels and muscle structure were long gone. The transmission of energy and the driving of force were all achieved through these grains of sand. He successfully broke through the defense line. He grabbed the head of the white-clothed monster and pressed it to the ground. He didn't allow the monster to struggle at all and immediately followed up with a scythe attack. The scythe with the resentment of the dead smoothly cut into the target's back and even completely penetrated the monster's body, firmly fixing the white-clothed monster to the ground. But there seemed to be something wriggling in the wound on the back that was cut open. Taking a closer look, there were no organs or flesh in the body cavity of the white-clothed monster at all. Creak, creak, creak. Instead, it was full of living fingers. These fingers seemed to have locked onto the attacker, and several fingers that had undergone deep mutation and could freely stretch length suddenly shot out. Oh no! The form of the sand structure was not invincible, and Han Dong's head was still a weakness. At the critical moment, the fluttering black hair and the sharp white scythe flashed together. Seeing that her sweetheart was in danger, Mia decisively slashed, crack, crack. Broken fingers scattered all over the ground. At this time, the situation was completely formed. Chapter 920. In a core control room full of black metal tubes. The tubes formed the floor and walls, and various sophisticated instruments were buried in them, as well as nerve cables connecting various areas of Shen Du, the referee, who was in charge of supervising and controlling this year's promotion competition, also buried his body in the cables to supervise the entire promotion competition. Suddenly, the referee's body trembled. His left pinky finger fell to the ground without warning. Incredible! These slaves have such quality. If they can be trained well, maybe. Thinking of this, a strange smile appeared under the golden mask. Facing fear head-on, Han Dong turned into a dead man in the desert. He integrated the resentment of thousands of slaves into the scythe, cut into the target's back and fixed it to the ground. His teammates suppressed the fear in their hearts with extreme means and attacked the monsters fixed on the ground with the main purpose of cutting off the fingers. In this way, he exhausted all the physical strength of the target until it no longer made a creaking sound. When the scythe's death desertification effect was greater than the monster's regeneration rate, the will of death successfully spread to the monster's body and completely decertified. At this moment, Han Dong was like the messenger of death harvesting the souls of the dead in the desert. The woman with the crazy screaming fingers finally turned into a mummy. As Han Dong pulled out the scythe, the mummy's body turned into sand on the ground. However, something seemed to have fallen in the sand. Everyone worked hard. Mia, good job. Han Dong deliberately gave a thumbs up to Mia, who was sitting by the wall. In this battle with the monsters, Mia's contribution was the greatest. After more than 10 days of extreme experience, Mia herself had grown tremendously. At the same time, the stone hanging in Han Dong's heart was completely put down. After all, Han Dong himself was not sure if he could not kill these monsters at all in the game, or if there would suddenly be a full resurrection setting at the last moment. Facts proved that he succeeded. The first thing after the event, Han Dong returned the toad pearl to Meritus. Dead form was lifted. The sand grains, which were used as the only energy source, automatically formed into skin, blood vessels, flesh, and various organs. The will of the dead hidden in the scythe also returned to the ring under the will of the high priest. At this point, Han Dong could perfectly control this bone ring. More than half of the toad beads stored in his body had been consumed. As the toad bead was swallowed back into Meritus's body, her weakened state was immediately lifted. She only stared at Han Dong and nodded without saying anything. In fact, Han Dong's performance had already surpassed her tone. With the death of the monster, the entire floor became a safe zone. At the same time, Han Dong bent down and pulled out a jade finger that was not affected by the sand from the monster's corpse. Its specific function was unknown, and it did not seem like a piece of equipment. It was also at this moment. The fate system beep. Obtained Imhotep's Great Escape. Advancement reward condition. Kill the undefeatable Terror Monster. Terror Monster was a monster created by the Black Pyramid's Priest of Fear, who was also the main referee of this competition, Tutraman. It was marked as invincible in the setting. Participants killed by the Terror Monster would not die, but would be in a deep coma for a week due to the invasion of fear. The setting of the Terror Monster was higher than the standard of the competition. If the participant could kill this monster, they would get a special opportunity. Reward. Black Pyramid's token finger. After passing the promotion competition, give the token to the Priest of Fear Tutraman, and you will be qualified to work under him and become an apprentice priest of the Black Pyramid. After listening to the system beep, Dempsey's eyes lit up and he immediately shouted, "Nicholas! This is the identity test that I told you about before. It involves the connection to the fate world. You must take care of this thing. It should be a primer for the identity test." Okay, that's right. With this token, he could directly work in the Black Pyramid and get closer to the Pharaoh's position. The so-called Priest of Fear seemed to be very high up, and he must be one of the important figures in the Black Pyramid. He would have to wait until he met the Priest of Fear. After a short rest, we will go find the exit. Well, Nicholas, don't you think it's strange? The so-called Terror Monster is higher than the standard of the competition. Since we can kill such a monster, shouldn't it be judged that we have passed the competition? Maybe the nature of killing the monster is different from the nature of the competition. The Black Pyramid needs to use the promotion competition to test our characteristics in a certain aspect. The way to test our characteristics is to see if we can find the exit. Later, we will go through the stairs and go to the lower level to take a look. The deed of killing the Terror Monster made this team receive a lot of attention, especially Han Dong, who showed the undead form and contributed the most. For a moment, the high and mighty Pharaoh smelled a trace of threat. Warden Basha, who was watching the game carefully in the Colosseum, showed a surprised expression and slowly turned into a gratified smile. It seems that I underestimated you. With such a performance, the Colosseum can't keep you at all. The Black Pyramid should give you the position of priest trainee. Although the Colosseum will also receive a direct reward for providing talents, I am still reluctant. With such a body, you can actually kill one of the Terror Priest's fingers. You are indeed a foreigner. At this time, the Colosseum executives had already found Warden Basha and asked about Han Dong's situation. They wanted to bargain with the Black Pyramid and sell this slave at a very high price. The view changed back. Due to the killing of the Terror Monster, the floor became the safe zone. The cost of killing the Terror Monster was great, and everyone's stamina was basically exhausted. A long rest was necessary. After all, Han Dong suspected that there was a Terror Monster on every floor, so they had to ensure that their stamina was sufficient. However, while everyone was resting, a series of footsteps came from the corridor. Han Dong and the others immediately prepared for battle. After all, they were not sure what came to this floor. It could be another team, or it could be another terror monster that came to fill the gap. As the footsteps came closer, a bald young man first appeared at the other end of the corridor, followed by the team members who looked frightened. Gusu Handong frowned. He did not expect to meet the team he least wanted to meet here. The team that came to this floor was the Dragon City team. The team members also regarded Handong and the others as hybrid demons and immediately prepared for battle. Chapter 921. The Dragon City team had just changed from a tense state of escaping to a combat state. When they saw that the battle was about to start, Handong, however, put on a kind expression and spoke in standard Mandarin Chinese. "There is no danger on this floor. You can rest here for a while. We escaped to this floor about 10 minutes ago. We have already searched this floor thoroughly and confirmed that there are no terror source monsters here." Most of the members of the Dragon City team naturally didn't believe Handong's words and thought that it was a lie of the hybrid demons. That's right, Handong was indeed lying. He deliberately hid the fact that they killed the terror source monsters and said that they escaped to this floor, but he didn't have any intention of framing the Dragon City team. In a situation where he already had a grudge with the engineer Wangdu, if he completely opposed the Dragon City team, it would be really troublesome. Because he had some contact with the monk Gu Su in advance, Handong tried to establish a certain relationship. Even if they couldn't establish a friendly relationship, they would try to maintain a neutral relationship and focus on clearing the level. The lies of the hybrid demons, expel them, or Division Jade, who was full of righteousness and holding a three-pointed spear, was about to wave her weapon and challenge Handong. Unexpectedly, an invisible and powerful arm stopped her in her tracks. In the blink of an eye, as the captain, the monk Gu Su stood at the front of the team and thanked Handong on the opposite side of the passage. "Thank you." Then he turned around and signaled his teammates to rest. The continuous high tension and the invasion of fear deep into the bone marrow, as well as the monster's sneak attack when they left through the safety door. The state of the Dragon City team could be said to be extremely bad. Even Gu Su himself had a serious injury that was enough to affect his strength, but it was blocked by the monk's robe. If they fought with the hybrid demons in a good state now, they would be the ones at a disadvantage. Moreover, Gu Su and Handong had already discussed this before. Through the mind's eye, Gu Su had verified Handong's mantis demon aura, but at the same time, he had also identified his human heart. Handong's words just now were both true and false, but Gu Su could tell that the information that there was no danger on this floor was true. Since that was the case, it was a good opportunity to reorganize the troop. Handong continued to say kindly, "By the way, the second last sick room in front of you is the safe zone. If you need a water supply, you can rest there." "Thank you. We'll just stay here." Just like that, the two teams sat down and rested about 30 meters apart. Handong tilted his head and looked at his teammate. "I'll handle the rest of the communication. You guys take a break. Especially Miss Mary. Restrain your hostility. If you want to obtain something useful for the Bufo, you can't make too many enemies. The two teams from the United States are already troublesome enough. If we provoke this team, it's likely that we'll be killed in advance." Meritus, who had been glaring at them the whole time, also restrained herself a little because of Handong's words. Demps was very supportive of Handong's approach and added, "Just now in the reserve area, through the eyes of the Dragon City team members, I can roughly see that they seem to be biased against Wangdu's engineering team. It might work if we seize this point." Okay. To be honest, Handong himself was not inclined to seek peace. After all, when the monk found him in the dream, he suppressed him with the Dharma without saying a word. It made Handong very unhappy. However, although he was unhappy, the monk's strength was in front of him. He tore apart the blood dog with his bare hands, which scared Count out of his wits. Moreover, the other people in this Dragon City team were not simple characters either. Once they were on opposing sides, the difficulty of the Prometheus world would rise to a level which was not conducive to Han Dong's interests. In terms of seniority, Hua Zipping is lower than you, right? Han Dong directly started the topic with an acquaintance in Dragon City. In Dragon City, which was in a different universe, Hua Zipping, who was waving his sword endlessly, paused for a moment. How do you know junior brother Hua? Ordovician Jade looked at Han Dong with a surprised gaze. In terms of foundation, Ordovician Jade and Hua Zipping both came from the weapons tower. After all, Hua Zipping was considered the benchmark of the younger generation, a rare sword genius that only appeared once in 100 years. He had only experienced true fate once. However, there was a problem in True Fate. Although he successfully cleared the level and all his members survived, he lost in the team confrontation and did not obtain the greatest benefit. This could be considered Hua Zipping's first defeat. According to Hua Zipping's description, he lost to a special knight from the Holy City, but he did not talk about the specific details. It was also because of that experience that Hua Zipping's arrogance was reduced by more than half. After returning to the city, he entered a long period of secluded cultivation. Han Dong also continued to add, "Last time, I happened to meet Hua Zipping and Yu Wu in the chain event, the Clown's Resurrection." Ordovician Jade was even more confused when she heard Han Dong directly mention the corresponding little Diding Yu Wu, who was also a little famous, and directly mentioned the corresponding little Diding Yu Wu. She even suspected that Han Dong, as a hybrid demon, had devoured the memory of a certain knight. In other words, the entire Holy City was in cahoots with the hybrid demons. After all, the Toadwoman standing next to Han Dong was an out-and-out mantis demon. The water exuding from her body carried a clear aura of pollution. Actually, the four of us were participating in the great expedition. On the way, a medium-sized battle broke out. Because of the sudden space distortion in the battlefield, we were connected to the portal in the hybrid demon city and were forced to be labeled as hybrid demons. Miss Mary, as a member of the hybrid demons, was in a similar situation. She was sucked into the gate of destiny at the same time as us and was forced to form a team. However, we have already reached an agreement in advance to help each other through the Fate event. The rewards will be split 50-50. Although the Great Expedition was real, there were many uncertainties in Han Dong's statement. Before the other party could doubt him, Han Dong took the initiative to add another sentence. "I know it sounds a lot suspicious, but I really don't want to be enemies with you. Also, when we passed through the desert area, we had a conflict with Wangdu's engineering team. Just like us, Mr. Tesla's team is an honorable elite team with tyrannical strength. However, the other team exudes a strange aura. The aura and way of doing things that the Tier 5 engineer exudes make people very uncomfortable." At this time, the monk Gu Su added, "The engineers in Wangdu prioritize their own technological interests. You should be talking about Novikov. This person has been blacklisted by Dragon City. He once killed a warrior of Dragon City." Han Dong was happy that he successfully changed the topic. His face immediately became gloomy, replaced by anger and doubt. Why did he kill his own people? A conflict of interest. However, the warrior on our side was also responsible for that incident. He has a more violent personality, but Novikov is worse. We must pay more attention to this person. He came here as a Tier 5 engineer, so he must have a personal motive. I will pay attention to this person. Be careful. The Tier 5 engineer's strength is definitely stronger than ours. Thanks for the reminder. Since we met here, it's considered fate. Why don't we share the information we obtained and work together to find an exit? Han Dong looked for the right time and tried to build a connection. Chapter 922. If the engineers in the King's City see the cooperation between our two teams, It will have a certain impact on the reputation of Dragon City. Regardless of whether you are real knights of the Holy City or not, the hybrid demon label on you is real. There's also a hybrid demon in your team that's hard to explain. We don't have to work together for now, but we can share the information. Han Dong's proposal for cooperation was decisively rejected. Okay, we'll talk first. Han Dong told them his deduction about up and down, as well as the information that the terror source monsters could be hurt. Besides, the absolute safety of the floor they were on was also a piece of information. At the same time, it was convenient for Dragon City, who needed to rest. It was a great favor to be able to get a comfortable rest in such a dangerous competition. Gu Su was generous and gave them a key piece of information. I have a piece of information here. It's just that up and down alone won't be able to find the exit. What do you mean? Our initial thought was the same as yours. We thought that down is more important than up. So far, we've gone down 13 floors. What? Han Dong didn't expect that Dragon City's team had gone down so many floors while his team hadn't even moved from one floor. Every floor corresponds to a special terror source monster, and they all have different characteristics. If you're not careful, you'll be seriously injured. After we rested in the initial floor's safe zone, we didn't stop again. Every time we went down a floor, we had to quickly go to the other end to find another staircase. In addition to you guys, we also met the local participants on other floors. The structure of each floor is basically the same. Only the upper and lower staircases will change positions. There's no chance to go down or up continuously. Also, we met a local team that chose to go up continuously. They've gone up 9 floors, and there's still no change. The structure of each floor is similar. Each floor can be used as the starting floor for different teams. The terror source monsters on each floor also have the same effect. We suspect that the exits may exist in places that we haven't considered yet. As for up and down in the competition area, it may be related to the treasure chests set up by the Black Pyramid. The reason why we chose to continue down is because we want to find the treasure chest at the bottom. When he said this, his teammates quickly exchanged glances with each other to tell Gu Su that he had said too much. He just needed to talk about the problem with the exit. There was no need for him to reveal the ultimate goal of their group. The important information provided by Gu Su also made Han Dong fall into deep thought. He even faintly discerned the key to the exit. Han Dong nodded. All right. Since it's not convenient for us to work together, I can only wish you success in your treasure hunt. Yes. He had rested enough. The Dragon City team continued their journey of descent. Under Gu Su's lead, the Dragon City team deliberately walked past Han Dong and the others. Miss Ordivision Jade, who had the temperament of a Valkyrie, deliberately exuded a kind of aura that instantly suppressed everyone. However, she didn't see the surprised expressions from this group of knights. She even saw a sneer on Han Dong's face. Compared to Miss Ordivision Jade, Han Dong was more wary of the monk and the black-haired young man. The cold killing intent exuded by the latter was even colder than the several night watchers that Han Dong knew. He was a different kind of professional killer. Captain, why did you tell them our purpose? According to the information given by Nicholas, we can basically confirm that he is the mysterious knight who met Hua Zipping and defeated him. Such a talent is definitely an important training target in the Holy City. Now that he came here as a hybrid demon, there are only 2 possibilities. First, he didn't lie. During the Great Expedition, he was indeed sucked into the portal outside the city with the hybrid demons due to the space disturbance. After all, anything can happen in the world outside the city, and the toad demons are proficient in space. Second, the Holy City has taken the step of opening up. The former is more likely. The golden spirit that the Knights of the Holy City have is recognized by my master. They are far more trustworthy than the engineers of Wangdu. The reason why I said the purpose is to see the changes in their eyes or expressions. Even if they really want to chase us, we can join forces with the engineers to eliminate them in advance. If not, it means that this team is trustworthy. We can use them to stop the engineers of Wangdu, and we can find high-quality treasures and mythical level in Luoyang. Did the mind eye see through it? When I said the purpose, they didn't have any expression. They didn't even take the treasures set in the game seriously. It seems that they just want to pass the game. So, they are really knights involved in an accident. I'll keep my opinion for now. We just need to know that they have no bad intentions in this game. If we meet them in the future due to a conflict of interest, we will still kill them. Yes. On the other side of Han Dong. The value of this information is really high. I didn't expect that although this little monk is unreasonable when he fights, he is really good at providing information. This way, we won't have to continue to run in fear. Han Dong was not interested in the treasures hidden in the game at all after killing the terror and obtaining the advanced item, the token. First of all, Han Dong already had a good ring and spine. Second of all, the most important thing was for everyone to pass the game. If they encountered the team of engineers while descending, a big battle was inevitable. You know the exit? Could it be hidden on this floor? Maridis had yet to realize what was going on. No, the exit has been there since the beginning. One of my guesses is correct. The keywords of this promotion game are escape and fear. Under the pursuit of the terror monster, it is inevitable that there will be casualties. How can we ensure the safety of the talents? Since the referee is a master who can control fear, then everything should be controlled by him. If my body disappears, you will follow suit. After Han Dong finished speaking, zing! The zombie claw on his right arm suddenly popped out and chopped off his own head without hesitation. Han Dong guessed that the exit would be the suicide. It was the simplest and most brutal way to face fear directly. Moreover, even if he really failed with Han Dong's characteristics, he wouldn't die. Regardless of whether his ability was suppressed or not, Han Dong's body was still independent. As long as his head was intact, his life wouldn't be in danger. The moment his head was chopped off, his consciousness returned to the main body through the transmission tube. Puff! Cough cough cough! Han Dong suddenly sat up in a fleshy experiment cabin, similar to a bathtub. His body was soaked in a type of neurotic mucus. At the same time, a terrifying face-hugger with long black hair slid down from Han Dong's face. The tail of the face-hugger was connected to a certain main body through long fleshy feelers. It was currently retracted into the center of the room, into the body of the referee who was wearing a golden mask. Not bad, you are the first person to find them exit. And you should have something to give me, right? The High Priest of Fear, Tudelaman. Chapter 923. Imitating Han Dong's method, his teammates also committed suicide one after another. The consciousness was successfully transmitted back to the main body. Because they didn't carry a token, his teammates didn't wake up in time. A slide was formed at the bottom of their corresponding flesh-shaped cabins and transported them to the game's settlement area in the Black Pyramid to receive the game's reward and promotion. That's right. The entire promotion game was carried out in the form of consciousness transmission. When all the contestants fell into a coma in the reserve area, the referee in charge of the game used the facehugger to connect to his world of terror. Using his body as the foundation, he created a terror monster in each floor that could evoke individuals' primitive fear. He never expected that in the space of terror he created, there would be an external slave who could resist the fear and kill a terror monster that represented the finger. The death attribute of Anubis is very important. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to complete the kill. Of course, more importantly, your willpower is higher than all the slaves I've seen. I'm curious, why did you think of killing the terror monster? Before the game, I've implanted part of the escape thought in your subconscious mind. Except for you, the other teams followed the subconscious thought of escaping. They didn't think of killing the terror monster at all. Han Dong knew why. Because of the support of the mad laughter and the special nature of the brain, it was difficult to implant a foreign subconscious. Even at the beginning of the game, Han Dong was considering whether the terror monster could be killed. He just didn't dare to joke about the game's outcome and the lives of his teammates. It wasn't until a contact with the head and confirmed that the monster could be hurt that Han Dong was completely determined to kill the monster. Because of that contact, I judged that the monster could be hurt. My intuition tells me that the monster can be killed. Intuition? What an interesting foreigner. Your brain structure seems to be a bit different from ours. According to my rules, because your performance exceeded the preset standard of the game, you will be given the opportunity to work under me. At the same time, you will be promoted as a slave and become an intern priest. As for the organization that trained you, they will also get a satisfactory, excellent slave training commission. Are you willing? Yes. Very well. Go and accept the slave promotion ceremony first. Come and see me in the Black Pyramid tomorrow. After saying that, a meat channel that could transport Han Dong's body was formed under his body, and he was immediately sent to the settlement area of the pyramid. Main storyline, first stage, Imhotep's Great Escape, completed, White Slave, has been promoted to White Slave. Ability restriction has been changed from a 5% to a 20%. Destiny equipment is still unavailable. Please continue to use the slave equipment you obtained from the Divine Capital. Following the system notification, the black shackles on Han Dong and the others loosened slightly, and a steady stream of power flowed into their bodies. The one who changed the most was naturally Miss Meritus, who was originally in the atavistic body. The 20% release allowed her to return to the strength she had when she first became a hybrid demon. A kind of water domain had already been formed. It seems like the realm of destiny wants us to completely adapt to the slave equipment in Prometheus. Through this method of restricting equipment and gradually unsealing our growth, it will give us a second life. I made the right choice. Now Han Dong could fully control the bone ring by himself. The restrictions of the G-virus were relaxed, and the body's various regenerative abilities skyrocketed. Most importantly, the tentacle system was fully activated, and he could already build a more basic blood dog. Because the suppression at the beginning was too strong, Count in the body was also in a state of hibernation, and now it woke up. Woof woof! A basic blood dog that was only the size of an arm was formed. Because of the limited vocal system, Count's thoughts were expressed in dog language. Count, who was slightly embarrassed, immediately changed to telepathy. Nicholas, what's going on? Where is this place? Why is my ability so restricted? And what's the white slave you just mentioned? You're actually willing to become a slave. Isn't that too trashy? Count, who woke up, started to blabber. Normally, Han Dong, as the main consciousness, would definitely mute Count. However, now Han Dong was in a good mood because he came into contact with the inner layer of the Black Pyramid. In the following process, he would also borrow Count's power to a large extent. After carefully explaining the current situation to Count, Sui Xiong's focus shifted. The Count's focus immediately shifted. He did not care about the situation in God's capital or the Black Pyramid at all. Instead, he was concerned about Meritus's attitude. What? This female toad is so obedient. She actually followed you all the way in Shindu and lived with you? She even provided treatment assistance? Impossible. No matter what, she has the atavistic body. This kind of existence that has spied on the door of truth essentially looks down on inferior human knights. Count is sure that this female toad must be pretending to assist you. Once you encounter danger, she will send you to your death. If I'm not wrong, she will definitely not be willing to take out the toad bead to provide treatment. Toad bead? It tastes pretty good. It's really effective as my second energy source. What? Count was just casually talking. He was very clear about the importance of the toad bead to toad hybrid demons. It was comparable to life. It was impossible to take it out. At this point, Han Dong gently patted Meritus's shoulder with one hand. Miss Mary, let's go back to the Colosseum and report the situation to the warden? Okay. When Meritus answered the question, she deliberately lifted the curly hair in front of her eyes. After licking the overflowing water droplets with her tongue, she nodded in a friendly manner. Although there was still a lot of mixed arrogance in her eyes, it was greatly reduced compared to the first time they met. You? What did you do? Count couldn't understand the situation in front of him with his understanding of the hybrid demons. Just establishing a relationship. Back to the topic. Count, how much ability can you use now? It's very weak. It's almost the same strength as when I just became a newborn. Enough. Han Dong turned his attention back to his teammates who were gradually adapting to the unsealing of their abilities. Everyone should first return to their respective organizations and use the identity of white slaves to mix into a higher position as much as possible. When I reach a high enough position in the Black Pyramid, I will gather everyone to act together. Treat this destiny event as a second life and polish yourself well. I hope that when we return, we can catch up with the first phase of the Expeditionary Army's epic battle. Well, how do I contact you? Mia was still a little reluctant. After all, it was not easy to find Han Dong. Don't worry, I will use the identity of the Black Pyramid to secretly establish contact. When Han Dong finished speaking, Demps had already walked to the exit of the Black Pyramid. It seemed that he couldn't wait to go back and enjoy his luxurious life. Chapter 924. 5%, 20%. In terms of restrictions alone, it was 4 times more powerful. Although it was redeeming his own power, he still needed some time to adapt. Just as Han Dong said, he hoped that his teammates could treat their experience in Shendu as a second life and not be influenced by the outside world. They could fully integrate with Shendu and adapt to the biotechnology and evolution system here. After the restrictions were lifted, the team members returned to their respective organizations. Although Han Dong was chosen by the High Priest, he also had a day to say goodbye to the organization and rest. Since he came to Shendu, he had received special care from the Colosseum, especially the warden. Naturally, he had to go back and visit. However, before Han Dong officially stepped into the Colosseum, several well-dressed managers of different shapes and sizes came to greet him personally. After a series of words of praise, they also transferred a large sum of money to Han Dong. They also indicated that Han Dong had nothing to do with the Colosseum and only needed to develop in the Black Pyramid. Soon, the warden came and pulled Han Dong aside. These are the higher-ups of the Colosseum. Their status is similar to mine. In fact, it's easy to understand. Shendu values talents. As the organization that trained you, because you were recognized by the Black Pyramid to work inside, we also received a reward from the Pharaoh. We even accumulated a certain development authority for our company. The friendly reception is nothing more than thinking that with your potential, you may sit in the position of an official priest or high priest one day. We can use the current relationship to seek benefits for the Colosseum. Han Dong nodded and replied with a smile, "Thank you, Mr. Basha, for training me all this time. If I really sit in a position in the future, if the Colosseum or you need any help, I will definitely do my best." You just got the ticket. The competition inside the Black Pyramid is more intense and dangerous than any other area. Do your own thing first. After that, the warden put his arm on Han Dong's shoulder, purely to encourage Han Dong with this action. Who knew that this contact would be so serious? The warden's body trembled. The energy contained in Han Dong's body even made him feel danger. Growth was inevitable, but not so fast. The slaves of Shendu who passed the promotion competition would receive the black water surgery, provided by the Black Pyramid, which corresponded to the characteristics of the individual and used the better quality of the black water to guide the mutation. However, the surgery was not performed immediately. Instead, the contestants had to rest for a period of time. The warden suddenly remembered that similar outsiders had come to the divine capital a few decades ago. Through the various promotion competitions set up by the Black Pyramid, the abilities of these outsiders had obviously improved. It was even like a gradual unsealing of their abilities. However, these people all disappeared in the end and didn't cause too much of a change in the capital. The warden knew it was Han Dong's secret as a foreigner, so he didn't say anything. The warden pointed to Meritus behind Han Dong. By the way, your slave also passed the promotion competition. Will you continue to keep her by your side, or will you leave her for us to nurture? With her priestess constitution and her current status as a white slave, she will receive special treatment in the Colosseum. How about this? I'll meet the high priest tomorrow, Tutelaman. I'll ask if I can bring Mary with me. If it's possible, I believe the Black Pyramid will give you a subsidy. If it's not possible, I'll send her back. Since Han Dong had made up his mind to nurture a mobile Mary, he naturally preferred to bring her along. No problem. Goodbye, Mr. Basha. Binodi's Black Gold Inn, the first inn I stayed at in Shindu. The moment he matched the bone worm key to open the door, Meritus' close-fitting combat suit was thrown into the air, leaving only a shadow of her back as she dashed into the bathroom. Her ability had been unsealed, and she urgently needed to replenish her water, which was why she didn't speak along the way. Just as Han Dong was about to meditate to familiarize himself with his body, a voice came from the bathroom. Nicholas, can you come in? What? Part of the ability has been unsealed. At the current level of the hybrid demons, they can barely use some high-level secret techniques related to the truth. I want to see if your body can adapt to such a secret technique. Okay. In front of the bathroom door, through the translucent atomized glass, he could faintly see the graceful body lying in the bathtub. Just as Han Dong was about to push the door open. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Who is it? Han Dong was about to use the opportunity to match the capacity increase portable power source, but he was suddenly interrupted, and he felt a little unhappy. It can't be Mia, right? Thinking about it, the most likely person to find the door was Mia. Mia, who had been promoted, could use her authority in the organization to find out where Han Dong lived. When he opened the door with a strange feeling, standing outside the door was an old man whose body was in a segmented form. The flesh and bones at the joints were all removed, and only tough nerve threads were used to connect the joint. Boss he eyes? The old man at the door was the shop owner who sold the bone ring of the dead to Han Dong. Through the offline broadcast, he watched Han Dong's performance in the competition. Seeing the equipment he made being used 100% by Han Dong, this Hei's old man's dream seemed to have come true. You showed a very strong stance in the competition. Next, you will be working for the great shaman of the Black Pyramid, right? When you become an apprentice shaman, you won't have much free time. Today, I'm looking for you to have a secret cooperation. I booked a room next to yours, let's talk there. Han Dong also tasted the sweetness of the ring, and it was also because of this ring that Han Dong was able to kill the great shaman. Okay. Miss Mary, I have something to do outside, I'll be back later. The voice that replied was a little disappointed. Hearing that Han Dong was going out, Meritus could only move left and right, and put her legs back into the bathtub with a slightly bored expression. Half an hour passed. Han Dong, who was in the next room, received a detailed list. These materials only exist in the Black Pyramid and are directly controlled by the Pharaoh's treasury. If you can collect them, bring them to me. I'll waive the service fee and make an unimaginable equipment. Side quest. Hei's gift has been triggered. Requirements: provide 1 rare material to one of the 9 pillar companies in the inner circle of Chengdu, Osiris Agricultural Heavy Industry, Hei's Bell. Reward: 1 random equipment, at least better than excellent, fixed death attribute. Chapter 925. The next day, Han Dong went to the Black Pyramid as promised. The attendant immediately recognized Han Dong's identity and brought him to the independent stone room of High Priest Tutelaman. Miss Mary, who was accompanying him, was also allowed to enter. It was important to note that when one stepped into the Black Pyramid, there would be a sense of confusion on the spatial level, making it impossible for the individual to remember the internal route. Even a straight passage would be remembered as a winding passage with many forks. At the same time, at every node of the passage, there was a black guard with a heavy sword, exuding an extremely terrifying aura. Occasionally, he would encounter some strange priests, severely hunched backs, multiple arms, tail structures, or face huggers. They were all extremely dangerous, and it was impossible for outsiders to sneak in. After passing through several passages, he took 2 muscle conveyor devices. A large stone door printed with the words, "A skull drilled out of a centipede's eye socket," appeared in front of him. When Han Dong wanted to thank the guide, the other party had already disappeared. As he placed his palm on it, the stone door slowly sank. An invisible aura overflowed from inside. It was as if countless souls of the dead gathered around Han Dong, trying to evoke the most primitive sense of fear in his body. However, in the case of 20%, unsealing, the synergy between his brain and the mad laughter had basically recovered. He was completely unaffected by this kind of fear that was similar to a competition. However, when he stepped into the area under the jurisdiction of High Priest Tutela, Han Dong froze in place due to shock. This is such a large space? It was different from the expected office. To be precise, it was a large-scale factory area. There were metal aisles that resembled ribs. Many large stirring cauldrons protruded from the walls of the factory, liquid storage devices, mixing and reaction devices similar to human skulls. They were connected to each other through a large number of metal pipes. The gaps between the walls and the ground were covered with pipes, not wasting any space. At the same time, there were a large number of employees who had abandoned their skin tissues and wore glass headgear working here. Looking along the main road, Han Dong saw the High Priest Tutela. He was about to follow in the control room on the 2nd floor at the end of the factory. This should be creating a kind of black water with the fear attribute. The workers here are similar to the corpse carriers in the wormhole. They are all dead. It's a corpse that doesn't have the ability to think and is driven by the black water. Han Dong arrived at the control room. The High Priest, who was wearing a golden mask, was reviewing the reports generated in the past week. "You even brought a friend with you." "That's fine too. Her performance in the competition wasn't bad, and her abilities seem to be compatible with yours. You are allowed to bring an assistant, but her salary will only be 15% of yours." "All right." Han Dong was pleasantly surprised that he allowed Meritus to be his assistant. The High Priest put down the book in his hand, and the golden mask faced Han Dong. "Sure enough, your brain structure and certain characteristics allow you to resist fear. I'm very happy that you can become my trainee priest. However, the probationary priest is only your position in the pyramid. You are still a white slave and still subject to the control of slavery. When you're working for me, you must follow the relevant rules and don't cause me unnecessary trouble." Yes. Han Dong had learned about the slavery system in Chengdu from books in advance. The setting of the promotion competition was only to completely get rid of the identity of a slave at the bottom, lower, middle, and higher. Once recognized by the pyramid, one would obtain the right to mutate the high-quality black water and become a white slave. At this level, it would be subdivided into 3 levels, white, gray, and black. These three types of slaves belonged to the upper class. They enjoyed certain privileges in the fairies' capital and could take up related positions in various organizations. People like Han Dong, who had performed amazingly in the competition, were even allowed to work in the Black Pyramid. However, the promotion of high-level slaves seemed to be not so simple. There was no relevant explanation in the book Han Dong bought. High Priest, I have a question. After becoming a white slave, how can I continue to be promoted? It's very simple. Contribution. Just like when you were a low-level slave, you worked for the Colosseum and picked up garbage in the wormhole area. It was also a contribution to Shindu because you have potential and have made enough contributions. The Colosseum will raise your identity and let you participate in the promotion competition. Now that you have been recognized by the Black Pyramid, this kind of relatively low-level contribution will not help in the promotion of your identity. If you want to promote your identity, you need to complete the contribution mission issued by the Black Pyramid or 9 Pillars. Accumulate contribution points. When the contribution points reach a certain limit, your identity will also be promoted. Similarly, when you reach the highest level of a black slave, I will immediately submit an application to fight for a God's Chosen One assessment for you. I believe that with your potential and the death characteristic from Anubis, you can reach the requirements in a relatively short time. Okay, I will try my best. Han Dong was very clear that the so-called God's Chosen One assessment should be the next stage of unsealing his ability. It was estimated that he could lift 50% or more of his limit. Oh right. Do you want to become a pharaoh? What? Han Dong was suddenly shocked. Such a sentence in Shindu, which was similar to a dictatorship, could be regarded as an extremely serious reactionary nonsense. The high priest of fear in front of him looked normal. Don't worry, Shindu is fair to everyone. As long as you have the corresponding ability, you can sit in the corresponding position. You can even express your thoughts in front of the pharaoh that you want to fight for the position. You may be privately targeted, but more often you will be praised. I have wanted to sit in the pharaoh's position more than once, but unfortunately, I always fell short. The guy sitting in the pharaoh's position is indeed more powerful than me. It will be difficult for me to have a breakthrough unless I violate some prohibitions. Your performance in the promotion competition to kill Terra gave me a glimmer of hope. Do you have this idea? When the high priest first asked, Han Dong thought that the other party was fishing for the law. Now that the high priest called the pharaoh guy, this concern no longer existed. If there is a chance, I want to try. Very well. In that case, I have a few special contribution missions for you. If you can complete them, you will receive a lot of contribution points and it will also help you level up. What mission? For some reason, Han Dong felt that he had fallen into a trap. It was as if he was going to be tricked by the high priest of fear. Go to the Forbidden Zone and bring back some useful things for me. Forbidden Zone. That's right. This planet is not completely under our control. There are still 5% to 10% unknown areas. Due to some reasons, it is called the Forbidden Zone. The existence of these Forbidden Zone is one of the main reasons why the previous creator chose this planet as the civilization development area. Chapter 926. The Forbidden Zone, the former creator. These two keywords alone were enough to make Han Dong smell danger. Even with the 20% restriction removal, Han Dong was not confident about going to the so-called Forbidden Zone. However, since it involved the foundation of this planet, even the Black Pyramid itself, including this high priest, coveted the things in the Forbidden Zone. Maybe Han Dong could find some treasures in the Forbidden Zone and even remove the myth. With this in mind, High Priest Tutraman continued. The risk is naturally high, but it's not to the extent of death. God's capital values talents very much, and I have high hopes for you. Before you go to the Forbidden Zone, you need to submit an application for the Forbidden Zone to the Black Pyramid's management. You can only enter God's capital after it's approved. You should know that God's capital is essentially a living city and is active in the inner ring of this planet. You'll probably pass by the Forbidden Zone between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. You can only enter and leave the Forbidden Zone during this time. Make good use of the time and greatly increase your survival rate. Moreover, the Black Pyramid also values slaves who can come back alive from the Forbidden Zone. Even if they don't bring back anything useful, they can still obtain more contribution points than ordinary missions. If you're willing to accept the Forbidden Zone's proposal, as your person in charge, I'll provide some convenience and exploration equipment that can reduce the danger. Han Dong was pleasantly surprised by the last sentence. Giving a certain reward in advance was very comfortable. After all, Han Dong was someone who had a side mission. Seizing this point, Han Dong quickly took out a list. I don't need exploration equipment. Can you give me these materials? What do you want these things for? The High Priest's mind was extremely sharp and immediately realized the problem. Few people can control such materials. By the way, the bone ring you used to change your form in the competition wasn't directly given by the Colosseum, right? A ring with such ingenious workmanship is quite rare. Which master craftsman do you know in private? Han Dong could not lie about this question. After all, there were not many master craftsmen in God's capital. Lying would be immediately seen through. Hezebel. When this name was given, the high priest froze for a moment. The golden mask even moved up and down. The previous chief manufacturer of Osiris Agricultural Heavy Industries. 50 years ago, because he was dissatisfied with the Black Pyramid's interference in the heavy industry project, he directly abandoned everything and disappeared. Where did you meet him? In the trading area. A trading area for ordinary slaves? What a stubborn old thing. I didn't expect you to have a connection with this person. If that was the case, it made sense that the old man was indeed able to control these materials. Fine. There's only a small portion of these materials that I need to apply to the higher-up. It will take at least 3 days. I can get all of them for you. However, you have to promise me one more thing. Please speak, High Priest. When you go to see Hezebel, take me with you. I don't have any grudges with him, so I won't affect your crafting. I just want to see this old craftsman with a strange temper, that's all. See if you can persuade him to work in my factory. Okay. Ah, what a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect you to have such luck. Without this ring, it would have been very difficult for you to kill the terror spawn created from my finger. If there's nothing else, you can leave now. Han Dong was a little confused. Although he needed to go to the forbidden area after a while, as a probationary priest, he should have some basic work in the pyramid. But now he didn't know what to do at all. By the way, as a probationary priest, what do I need to do? The factory is not short of manpower for the time being, so there's nothing for you to do. Since you will go to the forbidden area, the basic work will be skipped. What you need to do these days is to learn and mutate. With your identity, you can go to the priest area in the Black Gold Tower to learn related magic. As for how to learn, it's up to you. At the same time, because you passed the promotion competition, you will enjoy a black water surgery. Arrange your own time. Han Dong was very interested in learning. It could be said that when Han Dong came to this planet that was dominated by extraterrestrial life technology, he hoped that one day he would be able to access the planet's library and quickly understand the planet's new scientific system by reading the books that had been sorted out by predecessors. This kind of endless learning attitude could be said to be inherent in Han Dong. As for mutation, Han Dong reserved his attitude. He had to see the quality of the black water provided by the pyramid first. If it was not up to standard, Han Dong would not inject it into his body at will, so as not to disturb his ability system. The white slaves were only a little better than ordinary residents. Han Dong estimated that it would be good if he could get a mid-quality black water at most. However, before leaving, Han Dong still had a request. Seeing the high priest smiling so happily, he asked directly. "High priest, you are in charge of the promotion competition this time. Can you let me see the whole process of the promotion competition? Are there any of your enemies among the participants?" "Not enemies. It's the kind of relationship that even if I hide, the other party will come to me." "Well, I can give you the video, but you have to solve your own problems. I won't interfere. If you can't beat the white slaves, there's no way to talk about the pharaoh problem." "Thank you." The slightly bulging area on the high priest's back seemed to have something taken the initiative to separate from it. Asterisk hiss. Asterisk a face hugger with long black hair held a brain with a metal interface on the surface and handed it to Han Dong. Such a modified brain was like a portable hard drive. There were many on the high priest's back. They were used to store different types of memory data, so he could do all kinds of things more efficiently. Han Dong, who was holding the portable brain, left the workshop with Meritus. The high priest did not delay. He took the list provided by Han Dong and went directly to the pyramid's treasury to apply for the corresponding precious materials. Back to the familiar hotel. Mary soaked in the bathtub again. Han Dong connected with the portable brain through the craniometer on the bedside and read the memory. The purpose of the memory recording was to roughly understand the performance of Dragon City and Wangdu's team and their gains in the competition. At the same time, to try to find the fifth team that still hadn't shown up. Dragon City's team is really strong. If they really faced the source of fear, they might be able to kill it. They really did find the treasure set in the competition at the lowest level of the pyramid. Fortunately, we established a relationship in advance, otherwise, it would be really troublesome to be targeted by them. Engineer Wangdu's performance was also good. Everyone passed. What's wrong with this team? Chapter 927. Through the memories in his mind, Han Dong found a team with suspicious abilities. The slaves in the Shindu had abilities that came from the black water. Most of them had physical changes, and a small number of them could control different types of magic. However, when they used magic, black veins would protrude from the surface of their arms. However, this team's abilities were very strange. When they were chased by the monsters, they would fuse part of their body with the darkness. Because of this fusion, the darkness would turn into tentacles that carried them forward quickly, allowing them to avoid being chased at critical moments. "Count, can you tell what kind of hybrid demon this is?" "Darkness. It might be related to the final goal of your human expedition. However, this ability to fuse with darkness is something that any hybrid demon that is slightly related to darkness can do. It's hard to tell." "That's not right. When participating in the competition, everyone's abilities were limited to 5%. Even Miss Mary can't reach the level of a hybrid demon. To be able to fuse with darkness in such a suppressed state, it should be a relatively pure darkness entity. Can you narrow it down?" Seeing that Count was hesitating, Han Dong immediately changed the knowledge base and shouted, "Miss Mary, quickly come over and take a look." Count in his body was immediately unhappy. How can this female toad know something that this Count can't? It's just a waste of time. Following Han Dong's shout, thud, 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 the sound of wet feet stepping on the ground followed. Immediately, a wet and slippery feeling came from the side. When he took off the craniometer, he saw two large watery eyes staring at him. Meritus went straight from the bathtub to the bed. Because of the domain, the water stains on her body didn't soak the bed. Instead, her body was always in a smooth state. "What's wrong?" "I found a team that seems to be a hybrid demon. Can you confirm it?" "Let me see." The moment Meritus put on the craniometer, the water on the surface of her body stopped flowing. Some web-like tentacles even appeared. Meritus concluded, these should be dark dwellers. There was no mistake. Being able to escape with the help of the darkness despite having their abilities suppressed, they must be the mantis demons that were born with the darkness. They believed in the Chaos Walker that was hard to reach. Oh right. Didn't your human expeditionary army capture Perugia City before entering the wetlands? The rats in that city are the same as the old king these dark dwellers believe in. Han Dong was shocked as he recalled his experience in Perugia. He could not help but recite the name of the Lord with the atavistic body. Lampstein M. Wazik, do you know the name of this cunning rat? You participated in the siege. This rat has a clone outside for receiving customers, and its main body is hidden in the garbage dump in the city abyss. It had completely abandoned its former form and turned into a brain structure. It had a vague feeling that it had touched upon a myth. Unfortunately, he was killed by me and little brother Dem. When she heard this, Meritus suddenly took off her cranium. She widened her round eyes and even grew a third toad's eye from her tongue to carefully observe Han Dong. Her eyes flashed with doubt and confusion. Did you kill that rat? Doubt, and disbelief. Although after so long of contact, she had confirmed that Han Dong was different. In Meritus's impression, the rat in Perugia City was not a newly formed atavistic body. In the central region of Europe, that rat was considered a very senior atavistic body, and he was also quite famous. In the name of Perugia, the city of arts, he often invited all kinds of mantis demons to the city as guests. If Meritus were to face that rat alone, the probability of her losing was high. We can't say that we completely defeated him. I can only say that my friend and I forced him to reveal his true form and barely defeated him. We forced him to embrace madness and forcibly absorb the myth of madness on the inside of the door, turning him into a huge monster that had completely lost himself and merged with the land deed. He was then killed by the subsequent siege troop. We actually forced that rat into a corner and forced him to abandon himself. No wonder he dared to find me alone and even tried to start a land deed war. But all of this is in the past, so I don't care about it. Meritus's mind was no longer thinking about the land deed war. Instead, she was thinking about other things. Since the matter was clear, Han Dong smiled. Okay, let's put the matter of Perugia aside for now. Since the 5th Squad and the rat in Perugia City worship the same old king, then I can try to do something. What do you want to do? You'll know when the time comes. Let's not worry about them for now. After confirming the identity of the 5th Squad and the information of their main believer, the uncertain factors in Han Dong's plan were completely eliminated. From this matter alone, Meritus was still very reliable. After all, she had the atavistic body. When she went through the door of truth, she would also pry into a large amount of ancient knowledge. Naturally, she knew more than Count. At this moment, Meritus pulled Han Dong's clothes. Do you want to go to the bathroom with me? Okay, Han Dong was also quite happy that one matter was solved. Before going to the so-called Forbidden Land, Han Dong also needed to build a mobile power source. Come on, Meritus took the initiative to pull Han Dong to the bathroom. At this time, because he couldn't answer the question and was solved by another hybrid demon, Count felt humiliated and was about to say something. Buzz! His consciousness was cut off. Han Dong, as the main consciousness, closed all the connections between Count and the outside world. In the brain space, Count, who was sitting under the talent tree, was so angry that traces of blood flowed out from his eyes. He thought of all kinds of indescribable insults, but he felt that these words couldn't vent the anger in his heart. In the end, he finally thought of a more suitable word that was commonly used by humans. Bastard. Time passed in a flash. As a trainee priest, Han Dong had stayed in the library attached to the Black Pyramid for 3 days and 3 nights. He was completely immersed in the scientific knowledge books in Chengdu. During the reading period, Han Dong even conceived more than 20 key points that could be used to publish papers, and he could guarantee that the impact factor of each paper was above 15. Today, Han Dong stayed in the library for 2 hours and was summoned by the High Priest of Fear. The materials you asked for cost me a lot of contribution points. This black stone mold needs me to vouch for it with my identity as the High Priest. I want to see what Hezebel can make. As they were about to go to the trading area where ordinary slaves were active, Tutraman removed the golden mask that represented his identity and replaced it with a white mask. You'd better not watch the process of me changing the mask. It may have a serious impact on your mental state for the next week, okay? When Han Dong turned his head, he heard the sound of flesh being pulled. It was as if the golden mask was completely glued to the High Priest's face. It even felt that without the restraint of the mask, something ran out of the High Priest's face, but it was quickly suppressed and replaced with a more common white mask. Let's go. Chapter 928. The Particle Radiation Team. Tesla and the others had established contact with one of the 9 Pillars Company, Nut Shrine Body Modification Institute. They originally planned to snipe Han Dong's team in the competition to eliminate this factor in advance. At the same time, they could also take revenge for what happened in the alien ruins. However, with the theme of escape, the difficulty of the competition was far beyond their expectations. Due to the high pressure of the competition, they had to give up on the idea of targeting the hybrid demon team. In the end, with Eva's perception and analysis, they found that suicide was the way out. It was worth mentioning that during the escape, Tesla's powerful discharge effect successfully injured a Dino crystal monster. It even caused a deep lightning burn effect. However, due to the escape subconscious in their minds, they did not have the intention to kill the monster. Instead, they took advantage of the monster's injury to quickly escape. This performance also allowed Tesla to become an apprentice oracle in the Nut Shrine. 20% of the ability was unsealed. Tesla also planned to use the modification technology of Chengdu to perfectly integrate his body with the bioelectric discharge technology. This would allow him to efficiently perform his contribution mission. This dedication to science was very similar to Han Dong's. Due to some special modification materials, he had to provide them himself. Tesla gathered his teammates to go to the trading area to look for rare materials that could be used for bioelectric power generation. Did you find the whereabouts of the hybrid demon team? I used the privilege of the Nut Shrine, but I couldn't find any information about Nicholas. His current position should not be low, or he is under the protection of Chengdu. There is no news for now. This group of people is hiding very well. Let's ignore them first. Focus on the accumulation of contribution points. Once we surpass the other teams in progress, we will have the advantage in our hands. By the way, did you get in touch with Professor Novikov? Eva, who was in charge of communication, shook her head. No. Since the end of the competition, we have not been able to contact him. Captain, you know Professor Novikov's reputation. He must have a personal goal this time. There is no if. Novikov's Mendel Company and Tesla Energy have a deep cooperation relationship. Besides, no matter how crazy Novikov is, he won't do anything to threaten us. If something were to happen to us during the Fate event, he would be imprisoned if he returned alone. Since we can't contact them, then forget it. We'll just continue with our goal. Yes. When the team came to the trading area, they also paid a familiar slave to lead the way to a shop that sold metal equipment or materials. However, just as the group of people walked down a street in the trading area, a voice suddenly rang out. Eva, whose ability had been unsealed by 20%, smelled a familiar scent. It came from the European youth, who had stuck close to her and suppressed her completely. Southeast, Fallen Knight found 20 meters away. He's alone, no other teammates. What? To think that they would encounter such a good thing. According to their observations, Nicholas was the captain of the hybrid demon squad. If they could kill him, the entire hybrid demon squad would fall apart. When he looked in the direction that Eva was pointing at, he really only saw the skinny Han Dong. There were no other teammates. Meritus was taking a bath and sleeping in the hotel. However, beside Han Dong was a hunchbacked old man wearing a white metal mask. When Eva's perception spread out, she didn't detect any strong aura. However, under the 20% limit, perception could only capture some superficial information. Due to the setting of slaves in the trading area, this hunchbacked old man with a white mask was naturally identified by Tesla and others as a slave hired by Han Dong. Sure enough, there's only one person. However, killing people in the trading area will cause a lot of trouble. Follow him for the time being. When he enters a shop, we will follow him. Try to get rid of this person inside the shop as much as possible, and then give the shop owner a certain amount of hush money. Okay. The original plan to buy materials had changed to hunting. But Eva in the team was still a little uneasy. This uneasiness came from her contact with Han Dong. He was able to think of a plan to escape from the attack of two teams. He was able to subdue her with one move in the melee. Moreover, he was able to talk and laugh with the atavistic body. Eva didn't think that Han Dong would reveal such a big flaw. Tesla, it's better to be careful. Well, it's indeed a little strange. He knows that he's being targeted by many teams, but he actually appears in such a public place alone. Eva, once you notice anything unusual, report to me immediately. That was it. The goal of the team changed. They mixed in the coming and going crowd and followed Han Dong. After bypassing many streets, they finally stopped in front of a shop with a strange name, Blackpool's Nerve. This shop feels a little strange. Eva, you wait outside. If anything unexpected happens, immediately contact the Nut Temple. Okay, Captain, you guys be careful. Actually, I feel that this person may not necessarily be a fallen knight. It's just that for some reason, he can coexist peacefully with the hybrid demons. Captain, you guys. I'll identify it myself. A burst of electric light jumped in Tesla's pupils. He led decomposer Walter and wave dynamicist Richard into the dark and cold shop one after another. However, at the moment when the three of them entered, a group of nerve lines immediately formed an old man at the entrance of the shop. He quickly closed the door and locked it. A powerful seal even sealed the shop, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Oh no! Seeing this, Eva decisively contacted the company, but it would take some time for the company staff to rush over. In the shop, Han Dong was already sitting on a sofa made of ribs, fat, and special leather. He stared at the three people who had just entered with a smile and briefly introduced the shop's characteristics in a friendly tone. Captain Tesla also came to this shop to buy things? The equipment here is quite good, but the price is relatively high. I hope you brought enough money. You must spend at least 10,000 milliliters here before you can leave the shop. At this time, sitting on the opposite sofa, the old man who was mistaken by Tesla as a guide slave put his palm on his face and slowly took off the white mask. Han Dong bowed his head and closed his eyes at once. Tesla and the others, who did not know how dangerous the next scene was, naturally did not avoid it. They widened their eyes and watched the process of taking off the mask. A scene that could cause deep fear was imprinted in the minds of the three people. Walter the decomposer and the strong Richard turned pale. Their bodies trembled, and they immediately vomited. Tesla was also trembling. His back was full of cold sweat, and the electric circuit in his body was completely disrupted. Just when the three people were in deep fear, nerve lines stuck to their bodies. It was Boss Hei's who was doing a body check. This was Boss Hei's own rule. As long as the customer's body met his requirements, they could buy the equipment that was made by him. Young man, your body is very special. After a round of praise, the equipment that was suitable for the three people's attributes was delivered to their hands. Pay up 10,000 each. In the current situation, it was impossible to bargain. Tesla directly emptied all the funds that he had prepared to buy the modification materials. When the forced transaction ended, a strong fear struck and their consciousness became numb. When the three people came back to their senses, they were already standing outside the shop. There was not a single drop of money left in the wallets between their arms. In addition to the fear, when Tesla looked at the equipment in his hands, his eyes lit up. This was the bioelectric device he was looking for. At the same time, it was equipped with a complete nerve connection system. What's the situation? Chapter 929. Shop Blackpool's Nerves. Although Blackpool was once the chief manufacturer of Osiris Agricultural Heavy Industry, that was decades ago. Because he hid his identity and lived in an ordinary residential area, it meant that he didn't even have the most basic allowance. In addition to his unique business method, the money that he had brought out before was almost gone. Now that Han Dong had helped him get a huge sum of money, Boss Blackpool himself was very happy. Moreover, he was a very honest person, and the props he gave out were not bad, so he believed that the three young men wouldn't come looking for trouble. As for the special guests Han Dong brought today, Blackpool didn't care. He was just a businessman now, and anyone who came to the shop was a guest. Han Dong was in an awkward situation. He had already noticed the particle radiation teams tracking through his perception. Originally, he wanted to use the two big shots to eliminate this team in advance. Who knew that the High Priest's attitude was very firm, and he believed that this was Han Dong's own business and wouldn't interfere. Taking off the mask just now was already the biggest help he could give. As for Blackpool, it made Han Dong even more uncomfortable. Since the High Priest was unwilling to help, Han Dong was prepared to extort a sum of money from him. Who would have thought that Boss Blackpool actually acknowledged the physical traits of Tesla and his companions, and even gave them several pieces of expensive equipment in return. It might even help the particle radiation team achieve their goal of coming to the trading point. Although he cheated a sum of money, it also meant that his opponents had become stronger. Han Dong also had a headache. But at least there was one good thing. The particle radiation team was affected by the fear from the High Priest, and it would be difficult for them to break free from the fear state within a week. Han Dong could use this time to seize the opportunity. After a small quarrel, Han Dong, the High Priest, Tutraman, and the shop owner, Blackpool, sat on the sofa facing each other. To be able to gather these rare materials in such a short time, it should be because of the High Priest's help. I didn't expect that the High Priest, who is second only to the Pharaoh, would personally come to a low-level shop like mine. Tutraman put on the golden mask again. I'm just curious about how the former chief maker would use these materials. In my eyes, it's difficult to combine these things. Don't mind me. Continue with your business. The materials are all here, so there's nothing much to talk about. Since the High Priestess wants to see it, then come with us. My studio is behind here. Nerve lines of different structures grew out of the shop owner's fingers and connected with the skull door lock. Creak, creak, the sound of bones disassembling and gears turning could be heard. Even the High Priestess paused in surprise when she saw the entirety of the Blackpool workshop. The level of precision in this workshop was quite high, especially in the establishment of the nerve sensing unit. There were hundreds of millions of densely arranged nerve threads. Through various brain nodes, these threads were sorted, divided, which could reduce the operation error of various instruments to less than 1 in 10 million. A slight correction. The materials I asked Nicholas to collect are not to be used to craft a single piece of equipment. They are to be used to complete the equipment. The bone ring I sold earlier belongs to the original equipment category. With this as the embryo, these materials will be used to perfect a complete finger set. After that, Boss Blackpool took out the design of the finger set that he had already drawn. When such a huge and exquisite design was displayed on the table, Han Dong even had the idea of bringing Boss Blackpool back to the manor. If his points allowed, Han Dong would really do so. With such a master of biological equipment, as long as he provided enough materials, he could build a mature biological equipment factory. Once the mass production line was built, he could create military equipment for the improved ghouls in the manor. Han Dong's overall strength as the lord of the manor would rise to another level. Back to the present. The quality of the deceased's bone ring itself had reached excellent, and with such derivative forging, it might reach a unique purple quality, equivalent to Mia's demon sword. Han Dong could also achieve a more complete dead form. Staring at such a special design, the high priest could not help but nod. Original technology, as expected of the chief engineer from Osiris Agricultural Heavy Industry. Since the high priest is here, can you help me in the manufacturing process later? I'm personally very interested in this kind of original technology. It's naturally good to be able to participate in the process. When the two big shots reached an agreement, Han Dong, who was standing on the side, became the biggest beneficiary. Two big shots who could represent a certain direction in the fairy's capital actually jointly created a piece of equipment for him. Such treatment was not something a white slave could enjoy. May I ask, why would High Priest Turman fight for these rare materials for a novice priest? You should be very clear about this kid's potential. If he can sit on the priest's position, he can do a lot of things for me. Also, this kid will go to the Forbidden Zone in the near future. I have to get him something that can save his life. Hearing this, Boss Blackpool's nerves that connected his whole body trembled. The Forbidden Zone. Isn't it too early? I believe in Nicholas's strength. Together with the tailor-made equipment made by the chief engineer, he can survive in the Forbidden Zone and bring back valuable things. After all, this is the fastest way to increase contribution. At this point, the high priest changed to a private voice transmission. Mr. Blackpool, you know about the Outlanders, right? If we don't make use of them quickly, they might disappear one day. Boss Blackpool nodded and did not say anything else. He immediately began to make the equipment. With the operation of various biomechanical devices and the suppression ability provided by the high priest, the process of making the equipment was quite smooth. With the bone ring as the base, a finger glove was made that could perfectly fit Han Dong. Any bending and stretching action could be adapted to the finger glove. When the finished product was shown, even the high priest was a little tempted. At the same time, he also admitted that this chief engineer who had left for decades not only did not decline in his technical level, but also improved in some details. Boss Blackpool, if you're interested, you can come to my fear factory to take a look. You should know that I have no connections with other forces in the pyramid. I'll also give you a satisfactory salary and freedom. It won't affect your business here. If you're interested, I'll even allow you to work in this shop. I'm a very casual person. Okay. I'll definitely visit you personally when I have time. After this cooperation, Boss Blackpool also had a good impression of this high priest. In addition, he was running out of money, so it was just right. 3 birds with 1 stone. When Han Dong received the notification that the side mission was completed, he was already prepared to go to the Forbidden Zone. Chapter 930. Black Pyramid, Fear Factory, Internal Office. Non-pyramid slaves, it's difficult for me to get the qualification to enter the Forbidden Zone. In addition, it's not a good thing to have more people exploring the Forbidden Zone. I just applied for the qualification for you and your assistant to explore the Forbidden Zone. As for the partners in the promotion competition, let them find their own way to get contribution points. The entry time is tomorrow at 2:00 a.m. You need to go to the exit of the wormhole in Shindu in advance and show the staff the Forbidden Zone pass. Okay. It's a bit troublesome. If only Han Dong and Meritus quickly accumulated contribution points through the Forbidden Zone. The speed of other teammates' contribution points would be slower, and the final God's Chosen One assessment would not be synchronized. Also, according to the information Han Dong currently obtained, the God's Chosen One assessment should be an important turning point in the world of Prometheus. Once the assessment was passed, they might be able to completely get rid of their slave status and meet the benchmark requirement. They could choose to leave and settle the destiny event. Of course, they could also choose to go deeper. Just like Han Dong's situation in The Clown's Resurrection. After meeting the benchmark requirements, they could choose to stay and help the townspeople to kill the clown and get the final reward. Okay. I'll be there on time. Be careful. I'll think of a way to bring something out after I've gradually adapted and explored the Forbidden Zone. Okay. Although the High Priest didn't say too much, but Han Dong used the privilege of apprentice priest to go to the Pyramid Library to learn related knowledge, and also tried to find information about the Forbidden Zone. Although most of the information about the nature of the Forbidden Zone was confidential, Han Dong still found some interesting things. It was basically certain. The first alien race to live on this planet and develop biotechnology, the White Giant, was the creator of mankind in the world of Prometheus. It had been completely devoured by mankind. The ancient Egyptians who were brought to this planet by the White Giant, after generations of reproduction, were devoured by the White Giant for some reason. Using the technological knowledge given by this group of aliens, the technological products left behind, and the energy contained in them, they created Shindu. However, there were also some White Giant who managed to escape the backlash of the humans and hid in the temples that they had built in the past. These strange temples that were set up in secret areas of the planet were the so-called Forbidden Zone. However, when Han Dong read this information, he had a big doubt in his heart. No matter how dangerous these temples were, it had been hundreds of years since the humans turned against the White Giant. The humans themselves had gained great power from the black water and biotechnology, and considered themselves to be higher than God. The Black Pyramid itself should have enough power to completely destroy these forbidden areas so that the exploration rate of the planet could reach 100%. Why didn't he do that? Han Dong guessed that the temples in the Forbidden Zone might be the White Giant's production workshop, hatching area, or similar material production area. Perhaps the Forbidden Area temples could produce some special products that humans couldn't obtain themselves. Therefore, every once in a while, the Black Pyramid would review and send some slaves with considerable strength to the Forbidden Zone, to bring back some things that only the White Giant could produce to the Black Pyramid. As long as they could come back alive, even if they didn't bring back anything useful, as long as they provided some geological information about the Forbidden Zone, they could get contribution points beyond ordinary missions. However, Han Dong was also very interested in what was hidden in the Forbidden Zone. Han Dong summoned his teammates to explain the situation in the Forbidden Zone. In particular, he mentioned the High Priest's advice that it was not recommended for many people to go. Mia was the first to object. In her mind, compared to the dangerous Forbidden Zone, she was more concerned that her man would be alone with a strange woman. Demps said with a smile, "The application of the quota is not something we can interfere with. Since the High Priest only applied for the two of them, we can't change anything. Nicholas, you have to seize such a good opportunity. Don't worry about us. If you follow the High Priest, you may have a chance to touch the highest level of identity assessment." Demps was very much in favor of it, or as long as it was beneficial to Han Dong, he would strongly support it. As for Abel, it was the same. That's it. Miss Mary and I will go to the Forbidden Zone. It may be faster to get contribution points. You can also start to accept contribution missions in the near future. Try to increase your contribution points and slave status simultaneously. Then you can participate in the God's Chosen One assessment together. Why? I want to go too. Mia was wearing a mask. Although her face could not be seen clearly, her left and right index fingers were circling back and forth. Mia, you can follow Demps for the time being. It's not like you will be separated for a long time. Okay. I still have to prepare. The Forbidden Zone may be more difficult than I expected. Time was tight. After explaining things, Han Dong had no intention of eating and chatting with his teammate. Instead, he turned back to the hotel and prepared to sleep until the early hours of the morning before going to the Forbidden Zone in a full state of mind. Just as Han Dong turned to leave, Meritus, who was on the side, stared at Mia with a reluctant face. She deliberately stuck out her wet and slippery tongue and made an ambiguous licking action. Mia was so angry that she almost fainted on the spot. The scene changed. Black Pyramid, Black Water Experimental Zone. Research Room 03. A familiar figure was conducting experimental research here. It was Professor Novikov, who suddenly disappeared among the Wangdu engineers. Similar to Han Dong. Although he did not have a particularly outstanding performance in the promotion competition, he was selected for this year's trainee researcher due to a certain characteristic and stayed in the Pyramid's laboratory to work. All of this was in Novikov's plan. It could even be said that Novikov was very clear about what he did to be selected by the Pyramid. The reason was very simple. As a Grade 5 engineer, he did not come here randomly. Instead, he came to the world of Prometheus through a powerful fate card. He had already learned about the situation in this world through various channels. He intended to use the current world as a stepping stone to absorb the power of the world and break through to Grade 5, just like the seed of fate that was allocated with 5 talent points would reach a state of saturation and require a seed break. When the talent tree was allocated with 5 unique talent points, it would also enter a state of saturation. It needed to use a special method to break through to the next stage and become a unique combat power among humans. Novikov, the application to go to the Forbidden Zone has been approved. The time is between 2 and 3 o'clock tomorrow morning. God's capital will stop at the entrance of the Forbidden Zone for an hour. Don't exceed the time limit. Okay. Your 3 slaves are strength type and tall. I don't recommend you to bring them to the Forbidden Zone. It's easy to be exposed. Priest Zero, don't worry. These 3 slaves are carefully cultivated by me. Their existence will increase the success rate of my exploration of the Forbidden Zone. Well, try to bring back some useful things for our experimental department. Certainly. Chapter 931. Splash. There was a sound of water coming out of the bathroom. Han Dong stood in front of the dressing table in a pair of tight-fitting shorts. Staring at his slightly thin and weak self in the mirror, he brushed away the wet hair hanging in front of his eyes, installed John's spine, and then carefully adjusted the special finger glove worn on his left middle finger. To some extent, Han Dong had completely integrated into the system of Shundu and adapted to the scientific products and growth methods here. At this stage, it was quite important. Everything he did next would determine whether Han Dong could eventually sit in the position of Pharaoh. The forbidden area should be considered an area relatively close to the plot of the original movie. The Temple of the White Giant. If you can really go deep, you may be able to get high-quality black water or special items. At present, in the process, you may also encounter perfect aliens and some white giant who want revenge. The level of danger is very high. Miss Mary, no matter what happens, don't be separated from me. It will be very troublesome if you get lost. As Han Dong finished this sentence, There was a burst of bubbles in the bathtub overflowing with hot water, and Meridas's head slowly emerged from the water. She nodded while spitting out bubbles. It's almost time, let's go. They arrived at the wormhole exit half an hour early. Compared to the random entrances scattered on the wall of the wormhole, the entrance was very secretive. There were professionals in charge of guarding the exit. Only those who had the permission of the Black Pyramid were allowed to leave. After showing the pass to the forbidden area, a staff member with 6 eyes and a body like a cockroach received Han Dong. Excuse me, which exit do you plan to go to the forbidden area? Is there a choice? Is there a big difference between different areas of the forbidden area? The initial exit is still very different. If it's your first time going to the forbidden area, I suggest you choose the first exit or the 5th exit. According to statistics, the survival rate of explorers entering the forbidden area from these 2 exits is higher. Of course, this leads to more explorers entering the forbidden area from these 2 exits, and the exploration information and possible items in the outer area are relatively less. However, when you reach the core area, there will be no difference. Okay, then I'll choose the 5th exit. Han Dong didn't want to court death. Without any experience, he chose the most difficult entrance. Since the core regions were all the same, it was best to explore in a safe way in the early stages. Please follow me. The distance between the different exits is quite far. A suspended transport vehicle set up in the wormhole area arrived. Its appearance was similar to a spherical egg. It was attached to the cavity track at the top of the wormhole and could carry up to 5 passengers. Not long after the 2 of them left, the Allele's team, Professor Novikov, brought 3 team members who were 2 to 3 times the size of an ordinary person. They were wrapped in thick rubber jackets. Please take us to exit number 3. The survival rate of the 3rd exit is extremely low. Are you sure you want to enter the forbidden zone from there? Yes. Good luck. It was as if he had already seen through the information about the forbidden zone. The information in Professor Novikov's hands told him that exit number 3 was the closest to the core of the forbidden zone. His target was the inner core temple. He could completely withstand the danger in the outer area. It was the same no matter where he entered. He just needed to save time. He must ensure that every step of the plan was carried out perfectly and without interference from anyone. He must reach the strange temple built by the White Giant. Compared to the initial positions of the other exits, the 3rd exit can save me at least an hour. As long as this step is achieved, my great project will be half completed. You 3 don't let me down. After participating in the promotion competition, the first thing I did was to register to go to a high-risk area like the Forbidden Zone. The other participants will definitely not be able to keep up with my progress. Novikov's face was full of confidence. When he reached out and patted the surface of his teammates' jackets, a burst of resonance pulse was formed. The 3 teammates whose faces were covered by the jackets immediately nodded and listened to Novikov's orders. It should be noted that the positioning of Prometheus was Grade 4. The members of the Dragon City team and the other Wangdu team were all Grade 4. Novikov himself was a Grade 5 engineer, which meant that the level of the team members he brought was relatively low. They were more like tools than members. The perspective changed. The 5th exit corresponded to a large fleshy opening. Its structure was similar to the opening of an intestine. The essence of God's capital was the giant sandworm hidden in the planet. The way to enter God's capital was through the sandworm's devouring. Leaving God's capital naturally corresponded to, it had to be said that this method was quite hardcore. However, the sandworm in God's capital was a living city created by humans. Its structure had changed a long time ago. The excretory intestines of the sandworm were completely separated from the transportation intestines. Moreover, special workers were arranged to clean the transportation intestines every day. It was absolutely clean inside. Except for Han Dong. There were also several teams waiting in line. The number of people was no more than 3. Every one of them was speechless. They entered the forbidden zone with the mentality of death. After all, many people were forced to come here. Aptitude users who could pass the promotion competition could take up positions in various organizations and obtain a certain amount of authority and a decent salary. They could practically enjoy life in God's capital, so naturally, they wouldn't want to risk their lives in the forbidden zone. However, the slavery system in God's capital did not allow slaves to live a comfortable life. Whether it was white slaves or black slaves, they had to obey the control of God's capital. Every once in a while, a group of people would be forced to go to the forbidden zone to prove their value to the Black Pyramid. Next group, come here. When it was Han Dong's turn, a creature's tentacle applied lubricant evenly to the two of them. The transportation time is about 15 minutes. Please do not make any unnecessary movements during the transportation. After arriving at the forbidden zone, please remember the location of the exit and calculate the time. You can only return to God's capital if you reach the exit between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Also, if you are chased by living creatures in the forbidden zone, please get rid of or kill the living creatures first. If the living creature sensor at the exit detects living creatures that are not from God's capital within 10 meters, it will not be able to open the reverse transportation channel. Okay. As the two of them lay down on the slippery intestines, the speed of their descent accelerated to 80 kilometers per hour in a short time. Putting aside the concept of intestines, the feeling of sliding down inside was quite satisfying. To ensure that the two of them arrived at the same time, Han Dong hugged Meritus tightly with one hand. Poof! As a foul smell entered their nostrils, the two of them were successfully expelled from the sandworm's body. The smell in the forbidden zone was like a pair of completely wet boots mixed with rotten meat. Even Han Dong could not stand it. However, before Han Dong could get used to the smell, a slave with a frightened expression ran toward them. It was obvious that he was one of the explorers who had come to the forbidden zone and wanted to return to God's capital. Han Dong also noticed that his body was stained with blood. "Mary, there's something." Following Han Dong's reminder, a black creature that looked like a xenomorph ran out of the dark, damp cave filled with strange plants. It was bigger than the xenomorph in the movie. It was estimated to be 3 meters long. Non-living creatures detected in God's capital. The transportation channel cannot be opened. When he heard this prompt, the slave collapsed to the ground, his eyes filled with despair. Chapter 932. The Forbidden Area. The fifth exit corresponded to a giant underground natural cave. Although he was first attracted by the stench, the frightened escapees, and the aliens that followed, he was still shocked by the charming scenery and the exaggerated size of the cave. The distance from the ground to the top of the cave was 100 meters, quite open. At the same time, there were plants that Han Dong had never seen before growing in the cave, such as a huge tree with a mushroom cap, which could be included between the plant world and the mushroom world, and some huge flowers that could spit out confusing pollen. However, with the attack of the aliens, Han Dong's attention was diverted. Finally, there is the smell of aliens. But this is a bit too big. And the structure is slightly different from what I have seen in the movies. The back seems to be bigger and more prominent, the shell covering the whole body is quite strong, and it also has sharp blade-like claws. The black surface of the body also has some white spot. Kill it first and then analyze it in detail. This level should not be too big of a problem. Han Dong, whose strength was unsealed by 20%, was able to perform the most basic breath judgment. The aliens were strong, but with Han Dong and Meritus working together, it was not a problem for them to take on one of them. If they could not even deal with the aliens that appeared at the outermost perimeter, then this trip to the Forbidden Zone was basically a dead end. Count, let's see if you can bite through this guy's shell later. do you still need to try this kind of garbage? Believe it or not, this count will explode with just one bite. I'm not joking with you. At present, my ability is suppressed to 20%, and there are not many tentacles that can be used. I know the strength of the isomerized blood dog. Let's see if I can bite it first. If I can't, then I will think of a way. Well, although Count was stubborn, he didn't have much confidence. The blood dog could only achieve the level of tentacle isomerization that he had just achieved a few decades ago. Speaking of tentacle isomerization, this was an advanced ability that could only be mastered by the hybrid demons. It was the ability system and the individual factor of the hybrid demons, and the intuitive performance after the fusion with the tentacles. The shape and function of isomerization often directly represented the personality of the hybrid demons. Han Dong looked at his companion next to him. By the way, I still don't know what Miss Merida's tentacle isomerization is like. Was it an aggressive brain like Count, or was it a functional brain like Lord Perugia? Previously, I couldn't use it due to the 5% restriction, but I should be able to use it now. Just as Han Dong was about to charge forward and face the xenomorph head-on, a blood-curdling scream pierced his ears. The fugitive slave flew past Han Dong's cheek and went straight into Alien's mouth. Of course, he didn't fly there voluntarily, but was thrown there. The xenomorph naturally wouldn't refuse food that was delivered to its mouth. The oval-shaped head split open from top to bottom, revealing fangs filled with acid. It bit down on the food that was flying towards it. Sizzle! The strong acidic saliva immediately corroded the food. Even if the slaves themselves were mutated and could form a hard shell structure on the surface of their bodies, they would be corroded and digested in less than 10 seconds. Furthermore, as early as the moment the poor slave was bitten, his head was penetrated by the teeth and tongue in the alien's mouth. What Meridas needed was this eating process. Like Han Dong, Meridas also had a unique vision. Toad's eye, although the grade was not as good as the magic eye, it could see the enemy's weakness through a special perspective. The xenomorph's weakness was the head, but the whole head was wrapped in a solid black shell, which was difficult to break from the outside. The best way was to let the target open its mouth and destroy it from the inside. Due to the developed motor nerves in her legs, Meridas quickly jumped and almost instantly arrived in front of the target. Some kind of translucent tentacles made of clear water was slowly condensing. This is... Han Dong was just thinking about the problem of tentacle isomerization when Meridas showed it. It was neither a fierce dog head like Count's, nor the brain of Lord Perugia. It was a translucent, flowing water, human arm with a webbed structure. It easily and quickly reached into the mouth and went straight to the brain. The process of reaching out and extracting was completed in 1 second thump. The black xenomorph fell heavily to the ground, twitched and died. A cluster of ellipsoidal black brain was held in Meridas's hand. It was a one-hit kill. The crisis was resolved. Miss Mary, is this your isomerization? What type is it exactly? I can't tell. Mary didn't answer immediately. Instead, she shook the webbed arm, made of translucent tentacles, threw away the xenomorph's brain, and grabbed Han Dong. Mary deliberately did this just to scare Han Dong. After all, this was the first time she showed her isomerization ability since she cooperated with human beings. Who knew? Han Dong just stood there, didn't dodge at all, and let the isomerized arm stick to his body. Only someone with absolute trust would do something like this. Meridas quickly shook her head and let her curly hair hang in front of her, covering a little blush on her face. But Han Dong's focus was on the arm. Oh? It turns out to be a functional arm structure, not only has a certain degree of attack, but also can provide comprehensive support. Han Dong's eyes lit up, staring at Meridas's arm that was attached to his chest, using it as a connector for a mobile power source. After Mary stabilized the strange emotions in her heart, she lifted her moist curly hair and revealed a proud look. She simply explained her isomerization ability. Isomerization, a source hand. This isomerization is very rare even in Toad City. You are right, source hand is a multifunctional tentacle arm structure. It is both offensive and can provide healing and recharging to teammates. When necessary, it can also reach into the brain of subordinates for a short period of enhancement. It is also because of the uniqueness of isomerization that I was recognized by the Bufo and was given a mid-level land deed. Very good, Han Dong was quite satisfied with the power bank's function. Then he stepped forward, intending to see if Count's fangs could bite open the xenomorph's black shell. Who knew that the dead xenomorph had already decomposed itself? After the body dies, the cells rapidly synthesize acidic substances? All that was left in front of Han Dong was a 3-meter-deep corrosive pit, without any remains of the body. What a pity! Otherwise, Han Dong would have wanted to study this kind of xenomorph. That was defined as the most perfect life form by the movie Prometheus. If it was possible to eliminate the entropy isolation of different worlds, Han Dong still wanted to add some of the characteristics of the xenomorph to the ghouls in his manner. For example, a solid shell and acidic physique were very good characteristics. What an interesting world! I must complete the identity assessment as soon as possible and sit on the Pharaoh's seat. Whether it is the xenomorph technology or the chief manufacturer he eyes, take everything that can be taken away. Chapter 933. This thing is a bit powerful. We should be careful. Isomerization, source hand, was a special tentacle form that Meritus obtained through her own understanding of the water element, combined with toad tentacles and some human genes. Through the combination of the water element, the tentacles took on a translucent arm form that was immune to most attacks. Under normal circumstances, it would not be harmed. But when she grabbed the alien brain, it seemed to be going smoothly, but in reality, it was affected by a corrosive effect that even clear water could not avoid. A small part of the tentacles was slightly burned. Let's leave here quickly. There may be a certain connection between these alien life forms, so the news of the death of the alien you just killed has already spread. Before escaping, Han Dong first used the G-virus to stimulate the cells to proliferate infinitely, separating a large piece of meat and leaving it in place. Then he pulled Meritus and left quietly by sticking close to the open cave wall, trying to blend in with the environment as much as possible. Crunch crunch, reality proved that Han Dong's conjecture was completely correct. Less than 5 minutes after the two left, dozens of aliens crawled toward the exit. They had obviously received news of their companion's death. The mass of proliferating meat left behind by Han Dong emitted a strong meaty aroma, which greatly attracted the group of aliens. On the other hand, Han Dong cooperated with Meritus to conceal their presence and hid behind a giant mushroom-shaped tree, successfully evading the group of aliens. Han Dong, who was hiding in the dark and secretly observing, also discovered a few mutants that emitted a strong and dangerous aura. It might be dangerous to face them head-on. No wonder the survival rate of the Forbidden Zone is so low. It turns out that there is a connection between the aliens. Once pursued by aliens, even if you can kill them, you will attract more aliens. The only way to escape danger is to kill the target in a short period of time, then quickly withdraw from the scene of the incident and hide. Concealment ability, killing ability, and thinking ability can't be lacking. While the aliens were chewing on the proliferating meat, Han Dong took the opportunity to continue going deeper. Along the way, they encountered a few aliens that were wandering around the cave. Han Dong chose to hide and go around them. After moving secretly in the cave for about an hour, he was forced to stop. The path in front of the cave had been completely blocked. The dense facehugger eggs were embedded in the cave. The walls and the ground were full of them. The only passage was between the eggs, which was less than a meter apart. According to the description in the original movie, once a living creature approached, the egg would be immediately activated. The facehugger jumped out from the inside and forcefully impregnated the host, using the host's body to hatch a terrifying xenomorph. Since the facehugger eggs were being planted, here on a large scale, it was only natural that someone was in charge of managing it. This is the white giant? The one in charge of looking after the egg was the race that appeared at the beginning of the movie Prometheus, the white giant. However, the white giant managing the eggs here was obviously different. The characteristics of the white giant and the alien could be found on him. His basic form, white skin, humanoid appearance, remained the same. However, he was wearing something. To be exact, it was embedded with a solid black shell. The left and right arms were also grafted with the oval-shaped head of the xenomorph, which could shoot out tongue and teeth or spit acid like the xenomorph. He also wore a biofilm helmet on his head, which allowed him to see through the situation inside the egg. The white giant walking between the eggs was carefully observing the state of each egg, as if comparing it with the facehugger hatched inside. After observing for a while, Han Dong found that the white giant was indeed carrying out a good selection. The white giant carried a large glass container on his back. Once a good facehugger was found, the container would be placed on the surface of the egg. By injecting a kind of oxytocin, the facehugger would be forced to leave the egg and be housed in the glass container. It seemed that the white giant living in the Forbidden Zone had completely mastered the xenomorph technology and could even live in harmony with this group of brutal life forms in a certain way. Han Dong roughly guessed some information. As long as we pass through this egg area, we should be at the core of the Forbidden Zone, the white giant's temple. I guess that this group of white giant must be thinking of revenge against human beings, planting insect eggs on a large scale, selecting high-quality facehuggers to bring back to the temple, and then injecting them with high-quality hosts. The combination of good and goodwill naturally produce a more powerful xenomorph. After such large-scale planting, cultivation, and selection, it will gradually accumulate into a xenomorph army. Once it reaches a large enough scale, it will launch an attack on Shindu, Meridus asked softly from the side. By the way, who did they put the facehuggers on to produce the xenomorph? Explorers from the outside, or perhaps they themselves. Meridus also felt uncomfortable when she thought that such a disgusting thing might hold her head and inject disgusting foreign objects into her body. After all, she could only exert the strength of a newborn now, and she would be affected if she was not careful. Compared to Han Dong, the reaction was completely different. When he saw such a beautiful scene of planting creatures, Han Dong's eyes lit up and he was full of excitement. He even imagined planting facehugger eggs in his manor. By the way, in the movie Alien, the xenomorph was produced by injecting mammals. In the movie, humans, dogs, white giant, predator, and so on were all injected with facehuggers and produced xenomorph with corresponding characteristics. What if I bring these facehuggers back to my manor and fuse them with ghouls? Of course, first, I will let Dr. Swollen cultivate the eggs, only the best quality facehuggers. I believe that Dr. Swollen and Professor West will be very interested. This forbidden area is the only relic of the white giant. I must preserve it. While Han Dong was in a state of excited thinking, Meridus asked softly, Nicholas, are you going to explore it completely, or are you just going to earn points for it? If it's the latter, we can just take something or xenomorph samples back. There's no need to continue taking risks. I have a feeling that we will be in danger if we go deeper. Han Dong's answer was unusually firm. Continue to go deeper. And I guess that the thing that the High Priest wants me to pay attention to must exist in the depths of the forbidden area, which is in the Temple of the White Giant. Let's explore deeper, maybe we can use the lifeforms here. Use? What do you want to do? I want to be a pharaoh, at the other end of the cave, Entrance number 3. The starting point of the exploration with the highest mortality rate. There were a lot of poisonous plants here. The xenomorphs in this area also showed strange postures. Some even had pustules on the surface of their bodies, and could even throw explosive sarcomas that were toxic and corrosive. However, large numbers of xenomorphs had died in front of Professor Novikov. 3 big teammates wearing rubber coats seemed to be designed as xenomorph killers. Any xenomorphs that were found could be quickly killed. One of them was still holding a xenomorph whose brain was completely exposed. The acid-resistant gloves allowed them to ignore the xenomorph's body fluid. Sure enough, it's the same as the information. No matter what kind of xenomorph, its weakness is the same. This kind of chitin shell can be quickly degraded by actinomycetes, and it can be easily solved by destroying the brain with brute force. With Professor Novikov's killing spree, there were fewer and fewer xenomorphs that came to find them. With his special lungs, he sniffed the flow of substances in the air and came to the front of the White Giant's temple by killing them head-on. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.